Hello everyone and welcome back to Fleet's Random Ramblings. I hope you're all enjoying yourself. I know I am. It's been a long Friday, but we're here now. Hope you're all enjoying your Friday evening as much as I am. And I hope you're all having as much fun as I am this evening. But without further ado, it's time for us to crack on and get into... "2 minutes late, this is an outrage." Ah, well. Sorry, I'm just in the middle of something that's come up right at this moment. Right. Where are we? Here we go. And, you know, I've lost Rambling Zone on my own server. That is... Well done, Fleet. You 10 out of 10. I don't know how I lose a channel on my own server, but hey-ho, that's the way it is. I'd like to thank Moe for helping collect the questions this week. Great help. And also Ruron, who also helped as well. Got a lot of questions. Lots of things that need to happen. As we often do, to be fair. We do often have a lot of questions. There we go. I found it. If I can spell. There we go. And there we are. We're live. We are live. Jolly good. Right. So without further ado, let's crack right on into the questions. Typical Gunnery Officer asks, opinions on the XB70. What if the US puts more focus on...
I'm going to say hello.
Oh, I did.
Yeah, wow.
I did.
Wow,
I did say hello.
chopped liver
I
over
said,
here.
I
Damn.
said, I did say hello. Hi, Foxo. Hi, Ruinon. Did that not transmit?
No, it did not, fam, because you joined the stage after you started.
Well, whoops. I did say it. But never mind. Sorry about that.
It's okay. It's okay. I'm trans in America. I'm used to being ignored.
Oh, for God's sake. Put the soapbox away.
That was at least a little funny. That was at least a little funny. Come on.
It was, but I'm telling you to put the fucking soapbox down. Put it down. It's a dangerous weapon. It's a dangerous weapon.
Yeah, Fleet, we're no soap's your biggest enemy.
Oh,
so
shut
put it
up,
down.
woman.
No,
Anyway.
no. Wheat is not a devotee of Nurgle.
Look,
He's from Sheffield. Of course he is.
I'm out of the... Oh, for God's sake, Fox, I swear to God. Stop. Anyway, Typical Gunnery Officer asks... stop! Typical Gunnery Officer asks, opinions on the XB70. What if the US puts more focus on the supersonic transport aircraft like they did with the 747 airliner and allows Lockheed to design and produce the SST design instead of Boeing, which scrapped theirs to focus on the 747? Do you think the Lockheed SST can compete with the Great Concorde? Now, I know a fair bit about the Boeing one. It's quite famous. Lockheed L2000. Let's see. How is it supposed to look?
What?
Oh, good lord. Why? Why did Lockheed think this was a good idea? Who designed this? who thought this was a good idea? Who?
I mean,
It's fucking why? Who? Why do you have separate pods? Like one pod under each wing for 2 engines, not 4 pods for 4 engines. Come on, Lockheed, get it together.
Okay, there can be actually a good reason for that.
And also, hello, copying the homework. It's just US Concorde with differently podded engines. Hello, copying the homework much?
Okay, but Fleet. This is physics, okay?
I
Which
know.
means that
I am making
they
a
kind of look the same.
I know. I am making a joke at national expense. Just roll with me here.
No.
I mean, the XB70 is probably the better one of the two.
The XB70 is a bloody bomber.
Oh yeah, I don't know why it was brought up in the question.
Yeah, like what? Hello. And honestly, for the American market, politely, these aircraft will... There's a reason why Concorde worked. Because it was in the right size bracket for the sort of passenger numbers it was expected to actually carry. Once they raised the price bracket to appropriate levels, they just about filled each aircraft, but only just. And that was because of the price point that was required to make them profitable. There were only a certain amount of clientele for that market.
And even then, Concorde, supersonic passenger transport, was not really that commercially viable.
It was once they raised the pricing, but there was only enough of a market for Concorde. Once they did raise the pricing.
But if it was still a commercially viable option, we would still have Concorde or Concorde's successor.
Well, no, it was still
Right.
Concorde was still making profit up until about the massive spike in. It wasn't so much that Concorde or supersonic transport killed Concorde. 9/11 killed Concorde, and the massive increase in cost involved with flying that brought on at the airport end of flying, and the changes that
wasn't what killed them.
Well, it was the beginning of the end.
No, for what killed them, and it was a slow and painful death, was the introduction of speed restrictions on non-wartime aircraft going over land.
Well, no, that didn't.
Which meant that you could only go supersonic over the ocean.
Well, no, that didn't kill Concorde, because Concorde was always a transatlantic aircraft, and that was the case since its existence. That ban came in very, very early. That wasn't.
Yeah, but a lot of what Concorde did was coast to coast in America, and that effectively banned that.
No, Concorde was transatlantic.
And also, Fleet, there's a super tanker-sized hole in your argument about the excess costs applied by TSA. All airlines had to shoulder that cost.
Yes, but there's a difference
on
between
every model of plane.
Yes, that is true. But there's a difference between shouldering that cost on every model of aircraft and then adding that on to Concorde's already exorbitant operating costs and fees to, license. It is a...
Okay, so that implies then, if the profit margins on Concorde are that much thinner than they are on Boeing or Airbus aircraft,
or just general aircraft,
that Concorde is less commercially viable than those other people bus aircraft.
Which is literally my point. Part of my point, the fact that those margins were so thin because they were restricted on where they could fly. Because American coast to coast, even today, is very fucking profitable to do it quickly. And then the government started restricting.
Yeah, but Concorde never really operated in that bracket.
It did.
No, it didn't.
Concorde's most profitable routes were coast to coast in America.
Now, just to clarify, are we talking transatlantic or transcontinental flights?
Transcontinental.
Okay.
I
And
am not
partially
seeing...
transatlantic.
I'm seeing flights across open ocean, across the Atlantic and South Atlantic, but I'm not seeing any record of flights in coast to coast in the continental United States.
Well, I've got my book on Concorde here, And early on in their career, they did transcontinental and transatlantic flights. Transcontinental, from the figures it gives, were the most profitable. It was then regulated out of transcontinental flights, and it became solely transcontinental. No, it got regulated out of transcontinental flights and was purely transatlantic. That's what I'm reading. So, do we want to move on?
Well, we could also actually answer the question, which is essentially any supersonic military transport for transporting large quantities of people or goods are going to run into the same cost-effective issues as passenger air. And if you don't have the comparable infrastructure built up for civilian stuff, that makes it that much more expensive. And realistically, most militaries, even the United States military, are not going to see the advantage of a supersonic passenger transport, troop transport, for the cost when they can just fit twice to 3 times as many people inside a galaxy and call it good. And could the SST compete with the Concorde? Yeah, probably. But again, supersonic passenger flight really isn't commercially viable.
Yeah, it would. In fact, it would probably die much sooner. In fact, a lot sooner, because it probably wouldn't have the yeah, it would die a lot sooner.
Yeah, it depends upon how much Washington would be willing to subsidize it.
Yeah,
It's going
to
affect how long it lasts.
And Concorde will be first. So it would, in order to survive, it would have to try and steal Concorde's transatlantic market, and good luck.
I mean, again, if Washington wants to, let's say Washington does the same thing that a lot of the naval powers did in the late 18 and early mid 1900s, where they subsidized cruise liners to be military troop transport capable. And they covered, actually, the U.S. Navy did this with oilers, where they subsidized them to be built out fast enough to be fleet oilers. Like, the U.S. could do the same thing here and make AmeriCord more commercially viable, but there's only so much you're going to do with that, and it's going to run into the same issues as Concorde. So, anyway. Also, from the most atypical of gunnery officers. Question 7. Opinions on hydrofoil combat vessels during the Cold War. Do you think they're limited to the technology of their time, that we haven't seen the full potential of hydrofoil vessels, and also limited in littoral waters?
Yeah, as Xenos has pointed out, Concorde did Dallas to Jules. So they did do Concorde.
I feel like we've moved on from... Yeah, but that was after...
Xenos is confirming that I was right.
Not really. It wasn't supersonic flights like you were saying. It was subsonic. It was one aircraft, and it was only for a year. It's not the sort of thing you were implying.
Yes, because earlier they were looking to do them supersonic, which was the market.
But you were implying that they actually did do them, whereas...
They did a couple.
No, they didn't.
They tested it before the rules came in. Then the rules
anyway.
As of
hydrofoil aircraft.
Hydrofoil vessels, you mean?
Yeah.
Honestly, when it comes to operating quickly at sea, the hardened air cushion, as we saw the Norwegians adopt with some of their large fast attack craft, is a much better method. It allows for larger ships. Those really fast Norwegian ones, Skjold class, I think they're called. Yeah, those things. It's a much better way to get higher speeds out of ships. Another way is what's it called? Subcavitation, supercavitation. That's the one where you shroud the ship in a horde of bubbles to reduce its water resistance and then go wee. But that is size limited as well.
I mean,
Also
for Cold War tech, hydrofoil is going to be the easiest to do with Cold War technology.
Yeah, thank you, Cdot, as a Scald class. Yeah, but again, at that time, again, size limitations come up. You can only push it so far, and for the extra cost, what are you really getting? And it's important to bear in mind for the navies that are thinking about this, the only ones who really go for hydrofoils are the Russians during the earlier part of the Cold War with some of their torpedo boats they build. Because that does benefit that type of craft. But you'll notice the Russians abandon it for stuff like their missile boats. And they just completely drop it after a while. Same thing with the US. The US looks at it and goes, okay, we can build these things. What are we going to do with them? What can they do that a cheaper vessel can't do? That's slower, but not but not slower than our current fleet is?
And
the answer was nothing.
Yeah, the problem is they exist in a speed regime that, to be frank, if you need to visually inspect something, send a helo. If you need to kill something, send a sea skimming missile, because they're going to have a very similar flight profile as a sea skimmer, and they're going to be much more expensive. They're going to carry a missile, which is also or munition, which is also probably a sea skimmer. You are not engaging in a gunfire support mission with these things. You're just better off to either operate a missile or operate slower craft, because they're not going to have any range on them except to get out of littoral waters.
Yeah. Littoral, but yes. Typical Gunner Officer's last question out of the bunch that we're answering right now, unless Fox has last things you want to stay on hydrofoils.
No.
Right. Are we going to see Western MBTs, especially the Abrams, going to be installed with the M143 minigun to replace the M2 HMG to effectively counter drones? No, there's literally no point. What does the minigun get you apart from more complexity and weight that the M2 doesn't when it comes to countering drones in a direct fire roll? It literally nothing. This is like
okay.
This is
no. Right.
You first, Foxo.
Right. Fleet is correct. You wouldn't see the minigun replacing the machine gun on top of tanks, because we already know what they're looking at, and they're looking at 20 or 30 millimeter autocannons.
Not for top of tank rolls. They're not.
They are.
No, they're not.
They are.
They're not.
Well, technically, you could argue it's on the side of the turret.
Yes,
but they are still looking at autocannons.
Yes, they are looking at autocannons, but not to put them on top of the turret.
But to replace the turret-mounted ones.
I've seen more on the lines of supplemental rather than replacement.
Literally, remote weapon, 20mm remote weapon systems were a feature of Abrams X back when that came out.
Yes, but that didn't mean it got rid of the mount for the M2.
It replaced the mount for the M2.
I'm not convinced.
You'll probably never fully get rid of the M2, but
thank you.
Yeah,
it will replace it for most operations.
Yeah, I am looking at the concept art for the Abrams X. It has a 20mm Crows. It is in the direct slot of that looks like the loader's hatch.
Yeah.
Because
Abrams X doesn't have a loader, it's auto-loaded.
It wouldn't surprise me if the
Fleet is loading?
Yes, fleet is loading.
Okay, then I'm going to go.
Well, go on then.
Oh, okay. So a minigun is technically slightly more effective than a 50 cal, if for no other reason than it puts more lead down range. However, for the amount of weight penalty you're going to pay, just put a Mark 19 on there with smart fused shells.
Honestly, yeah.
Maybe a modified Mark 19 with a longer barrel and higher muzzle velocity with smart fused shells.
Yeah.
Like if you're going to go for in the same slot as a pintle mounted weapon, but yeah, essentially go from 50 to 20 millimeter and call it good.
Basically, to go up to the minigun, you're going from a unpowered mount to a powered mount. And at that point, you've taken away the advantage of the 50 cal over an autocannon.
Yep.
So why would you stay with 50 cal when
Yeah.
20 mil is right there and
Yeah.
significantly more effective?
Yeah. Right, that next question. Akizuki asks, what if the Russians deployed one of these in the Battle of Tsushima? Then they have another pre-dreadnought at the Battle of Tsushima. That's not really a change in anything radical in terms of design. All you've done is you've moved the aft turret forward and now it's super firing. And
Yeah,
that's
it's-
about it. It's still a pre-dreadnought. You've not really changed anything else of significance, if I'm gonna be honest.
And to be frank, a lot of the problems at Tsushima are, despite Rossovensky's best efforts, are based in the crew, not in the ships.
Yep. To be frank,
And, well,
to be frank, the Russian performance at Tsushima was nothing short of fucking fantastic, considering how they started. Their gunnery was
Actually,
good. Their organization was not terrible. Their performance at Tsushima was far better than anybody should have reasonably been expecting from them.
I do need to amend my statement slightly.
It's important to bear in
The
mind.
ship. It was the ships insofar as every single ship in that fleet needed a maintenance interval.
No, Rumenon, Rumenon, you were right. You were absolutely right at the first time. It was the crews. It was still the crews. Despite the fact that they were better than anyone had any right to think they would have been, it doesn't change the fact that they were still exhausted men at the end of a long voyage, far from home, who at the start had been so far from competent it wasn't even funny. The fact that they had reached a basic level of competency didn't really help much when they were exhausted, tired, at the end of a long voyage, and facing a battle-hardened elite fleet.
They were also, in any other navy, would still be called incompetent.
Yes, but compared to where they started. But yes, Fox was right. It's important to bear in mind,
Yeah.
however, everyone does forget that Togo's...
The fleet was fucked up by
Well-
Kamchatka,
Well, yes.
telling
No.
the Japanese where the fleet is.
Well, yes, but... Anyway. But
again,
can I was going to say something. Everyone forgets that Admiral Togo's turn about a point right in front of all the guns of the Russian fleet nearly got him killed. It was only chance that Mikasa didn't die. That was literally all it was.
Yeah, and if those ships, a well-trained fleet with a well-trained crews, would have sunk Mikasa.
Yes, but
It's the Russians' appalling accuracy that saved him.
This is true, but the point I'm making is the fact that they were, like, obviously, if the Russian fleet was as bad as everyone made it out to be, you know, in the pop history version of Tsushima, they wouldn't have landed any hits at all. But they did. Like, but I think me and Foxo are on the same page here.
I think you're giving them too much credit.
I think you're giving him too little.
Because, yes, they were scoring hits. They were scoring hits on a battleship and battleship squadron that was in the best position for them to hit while they were on a constant bearing.
I will point out, however, as well that we are talking in an era prior to fire control, which isn't so much a thing in this particular case. I just wanted to make that clear before I went into it. But the reason that matters is because we're running into the spectre of and this is something that would have affected any fleet in that position, regardless of skill level or capability of its ships in that era. They were firing at a small number of targets with a large number of capital grade guns and the secondary batteries of the Russian capital ships. The level of confusion between, shell splashes must have been horrific, which I think can also be said to have contributed significantly to the lack of accuracy on that particular shoot. Because it is worth pointing out that once the battle lines disentangle themselves, aka, the Japanese line straightens out, and you do get a little bit of, the one Borodino versus one of the Japanese battle line, prior to the hit to the conning tower I forget which Borodino in particular was Rossovensky's flagship, but prior to
Borodino itself.
Yeah, but prior to that hit, it was reported by both sides that Borodino's gunnery was actually really quite good, and she was continually nailing her opposite number.
Yes, her gunnery started as being good.
And
she's the only one who gets noticed for it, in stark contrast to what's said about the other ships.
The rest of the Borodinos did.
One ship doesn't make a fleet.
Yeah, the rest of the Borodinos did okay, from what I'm aware, but okay is not good. Anyway,
okay is the bare minimum.
It is, but bear in mind where they started from. I am continually fighting against the Russian fleet at Tsushima just died narrative, because you see it a lot.
And
it was annihilated.
It just died with no, But anyway, go on, Ruin.
To my point about needing a maintenance interval, if they had a chance to clean out their boilers, make sure their coal was restocked, make sure everything was ordered before they sailed for combat, it notionally could have / would have given Rossovensky more options with regards to subformation tactics, because his ships could be more responsive to the helm.
He should have taken on more coal and made a long dash around Japan to Vladivostok. He shouldn't have sent the colliers away. That was his mistake. He shouldn't have tried to...
Wait.
Yes, James?
Can I just jump in a second?
Of course, please do. Please jump in and stay. Or more the merrier. Oh, and Ambrose is here as well. He can come up as well.
So, you say he should have taken on more coal. I'm pretty sure every single time they took on coal, they literally couldn't add any more to it. And just before they actually got to the combat zone, they had enough for combat because they knew they were going into combat at some point.
They had a last chance to take coal. Basically, Rossovensky had a choice to make for the last time he met his colliers. Does he take on enough coal for a run to Vladivostok, or does he take on enough coal for a dash to go around Japan to Vladivostok? And he chose to take on enough coal to go straight to Vladivostok through Tsushima, which I think was a mistake.
It was a mistake, but he also probably had to weigh in the fact that he was probably going to go into action no matter what. And if you have less coal on board, you're not going to blow up as much as you would if you had...
Can I just flee? Are we talking about the offer to be called near Kwangdao?
I think there was another meeting of the colliers after that, but I'm not sure. I can't remember exactly on
the last one I remember is at Kwangdao, where he declines and sends them away.
Yeah,
at that point you're calling sea where in the enemy waters. Keep me if I'm wrong, but that sounds like a prime torpedo boat target. A lot of largely static battleships.
But then Kamchatka is right, and we can't have that in reality.
Yeah.
Beat me to it.
Yeah, but no. But Nick, off Korea, Kamchatka is the one place she is right. That there is torpedo boats.
Yes. I think I suppose it was like all things in war a gamble. And you did also have to weigh up the fact that the Russian forces on land were starting to suffer, and the fleet needed to get to Vladivostok to rearm, reprovision, and, you know, get ready to go back out again as quickly as possible. So I suppose, given that, he didn't really have a choice.
Yeah, I would suggest that taking the long route exposes them to more risk, and then the same risk of being engaged while approaching Vladivostok anyway.
True.
I mean, he could have always tried to try and get into places like Magadan, and recall there.
The problem you've got is that what's to stop the Japanese just torpedo boating him when he's there? I mean, if they could get torpedo boats into Port Arthur, they can get to. I know it's. And I know that there's also the fact that, like, why can't he do it in Vladivostok as well? Which is, yes, it's true, but Vladivostok does have the facilities to repair his fleet from pretty much any damage it sustains. Like, up to and including anything that needs a full dry docking. Whereas if they go aground / sink in Magadan, then yeah, those battleships are just write-offs. Whereas in
To be honest,
they're as far away as possible to rearm from the Japanese.
They are, but it will take far longer, and the supply links to it are abysmal.
It's a single railroad.
Well, it's not. Well, yes, but it's not even the. Yeah, it's not even that. It's yeah. But anyway, James, did you have something to say?
when you look at it, the Russians were actually kind of screwed no matter what, because if you think about what the fleet would have to do, they'd have to go through either Tsushima Strait or over the top of Japan, which is both bottlenecks.
Yeah.
And in the best world in the world, I like Rozhesvensky, and there's a part of me that kind of quite likes that Pacific Squadron, but they were screwed no matter what.
Oh no,
they're going to be done no matter which way they went.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I'm more just saying, how do we stop the bleeding / give them the best chance? But I think, I mean, I've said this before. If the Russians want to win the Sino-Japanese War, Russo-Japanese War, they have to win it with the 1st Pacific Squadron.
Yep.
Which they are perfectly capable of doing. It is a match for the Japanese fleet. It's just they don't ever get a chance to do it. Poor old Admiral Makarov.
Why did Makarov have to die?
Yeah, poor old Makarov, quite literally losing his head. Poor Makarov. Right,
You could say the fleet ran around like headless Makarovs.
Okay. So, next question is from Diplomatic Officer. Thoughts on the Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force destroyer Hatsuyuki class? Do you think it's the Japanese equivalent to the United States Navy Spruance class destroyers? I'm gonna preemptively say no, based on what I know of both classes off the top of my head. If I'm right, and I think I am.
Fleet thinks he's right. Everybody hold on.
I have as much confidence in Fleet here as I do a BMW driver in a school zone.
Which ship was it called? The
Hatsuyuki class destroyer.
Yeah,
the Spruances...
They're very different in tonnage.
Yeah, the Spruances have more anti-ship missiles, they have more ASROC, they have one extra gun, which is a 5-inch gun rather than a 3-inch gun. And it's also worth bearing in mind that the Hatsuyukis are actually much later ships by 7 years, and in the Cold War that makes a massive difference. It's important to bear in mind. They are slower. The Spruans are the destroyers of a first-class navy in the early 70s. The Hatsuyukis are the destroyers of a second-class navy in the late 70s. They're not really the same. They're both good ships for the navies they serve. And, you know, they do what the navies they serve want them to do. But they're not, they're not directly comparable vessels.
Yeah, one is twice the size of the other in terms of like displacement at full load. So it's certainly a bit of a gap.
Yeah. Anyone else got any comments on this, or can we move forwards?
I agree with your comments.
Don't know enough to have an opinion.
My wife has made a quick note here saying, while labelled as a general purpose destroyer, the Hatsuyuki's displacement is closer to a frigate than a DDG, as gunnery officer suggested. A better comparison would be an OHP in this situation. YouTube Minecraft Watcher is the next question. What Japanese destroyer name is your favourite? Personally, I like the Yukikaze. And Moe's quick note is he likes Shigure. I don't really have a favourite out of Japanese destroyers. I have a soft spot for the older destroyers. The pre-Fubuki destroyers.
I know my favourite.
What is your favourite, Foxo?
The Kamikaze class. The Kamikazes.
Yeah, I will admit I do have a soft spot for the Kamikaze.
And that's not because of what the other part or the definition of that word. I just think they're funny when laying torpedoes.
Like, honestly, like I also do kind of like that pre-Fubuki destroyer aesthetic the Japanese had going on. I think it just looks nice.
Yeah. It's sort of
like with the four single mounts.
Kamikaze 1922, right?
Yeah. The four single mounts all on the same deck level. The
flush deckers.
Yeah, the kind of insets for a deck down for the torpedo tubes. Two funnels. That very distinctive of that era Japanese destroyer bridge.
Yes, sort of.
Yeah.
I really like the cutout for the bow torpedo ships.
Yes.
It's not so much good as it is unique.
Yes.
Then again, whoever said being unique was a bad thing.
True.
My favourite's a bit basic because I like the Akizuki.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. The funny rapid fire machine gun.
It's just a pretty iconic name, and it's an iconic design, so...
Although, I will admit, did you bring some spare 10cm barrels with you? Because you've worn the ones in the turrets out in the last action.
They're molten.
What do you mean we've worn the guns out? We have only been in action once!
It do be that way.
The 10cm was a cracking gun, but bloody hell did it have a low barrel life.
Yes, those crackers keep getting taken out of the barrels.
James, you gonna say something?
Yeah, I'm just debating. I don't want to be a basic bitch, but I'm just going to go for Shimikaze.
Anything wrong with that? Fast boy. Or fast girl.
Fast girl.
Yeah, we're not Russian here. We don't call our ships boys.
Yes, we
have a soft spot for the Russian destroyers.
Yes. So do I. The World War II ones, anyway.
Oh yeah, the gun destroyers.
What was the question? The question was, what's everyone's favourite Imperial Japanese Navy destroyer?
Well, technically, it doesn't say IJN. It could be JMSDF.
Targa is technically classed as a destroyer.
Yeah,
Oh, it's a Targa.
there is helicopter destroyers.
There is the base choice of Azumo.
I was going to go.
I do
with
like
the-
Azumo.
Well,
the helicopter destroyer.
the funny thing with that is, I know there's the meme about having to get round the treaties, but it's not really
It's not a treaty. It's their constitution.
Yeah, but thing is, that's not the reason why they're called that. It's because they're an outgrowth of the previous doctrine, so they kept the designation.
Well, it's more a case that in Japanese parlance, for both the JMSDF and the previous IJN, a destroyer was literally just classified as an escort. So under their constitution, having an escort be the platform means that they can mostly sidestep it. The idea of having them, particularly the Azumos, mounting F-35 was that now they would be able to do direct strikes, which would go against their current doctrine of providing escorts and clear passageways for shipping and whatnot. For allied units like the ESN to do their strikes.
Yeah.
Having F-35 means they can do that themselves, so that's where a lot of the hullabaloo about amending the Constitution mostly stems from.
Yeah.
But primarily, the reason that you could say the Kagas and the Azumos are destroyers is because they're bread and butter is helicopter escort. That's kind of it. At least, like, from a doctrinal sense, anyway.
I just want to say that I take a special pleasure in pit maneuvering cop cars in Need for Speed.
And the award for best tangent in Catch Up Ramblings goes to Ruinon.
Well, which Need for Speed?
Okay, let's not go down the tangent too heavily, people.
Last time I played Hot Pursuit.
Typical Gunner Officer asks, what's your opinion on unmanned tank turrets, on future tank designs, and what's the thought process behind it? Do you think it offers better protection and less workload for the crew? I think it's an option you could take, but as with all options when it comes to tank design, there are pros and there are cons behind it.
It's a yes and no in regards to better protection and less workload. Because better protection, yes, theoretically you have a smaller cross-sectional area you have to defend with armor, and so you can put thicker armor on it. No, in terms of less workload, but with an asterisk, because you then either have to fit everyone in the hull and keep the same amount of crew, which is probably unlikely if you're going to do this.
It depends on the
And
tank for
then-
that, yeah, because some tanks are like 4-man crews.
If you go down to a 3-person crew, that's more to maintain out of combat with
Yeah.
the same crew load.
And also, God forbid anything goes wrong inside the turret. Good luck climbing around inside there trying to fix it.
I was about to
That's a
say,
disengage there.
as some a dad's friend of mine who served on the cheese wedges will quite happily tell you, an autoload is all fun and games until it jams.
Yeah,
Yes.
and that's I don't think they're going to drop to a 3-man crew, because I think they're somebody somewhere is going to make the argument that the 4th one becomes the drone operator. So you'll have driver, commander, gunner, drone operator.
That could make sense.
I-
I do think drones are going to be built into a...
I think that's going to largely depend on the tank platoon
Yeah.
itself.
See, Dodders, a reminder, you don't have to ping me.
I
do read chat.
I don't
Yeah,
believe
that's
that
quick.
there is going to be an argument for maintaining a 4-man crew for, say, like, let's say future Abrams is all it's cracked up to be, or they go with a brand new tank that has a completely like remote turret design.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to keep the 4-man crews. They will likely keep 4-man crews for the platoon lead vehicle, or for let's call them divisions, because I'm thinking on a naval sense here. You have your 2 tank kill teams as part of a single 4 tank or 5 tank company, or platoon, sorry, words. It's more likely that the platoon leader or the like section leader vehicle is going to have the 4-man crew so that they can have that drone, but I don't see every tank having a drone operator.
I mean,
Purely
yes.
for the sense that like it gives one vehicle way too many things it needs to do. Particularly in a case of when it comes down to it, not every tank platoon or tank squadron or company is going to be doing everything at every level. So it will largely depend on the vehicles that they are given, and it will largely depend on like what it is that tank is designed to do anyway.
I will point out, C. Dodders has mentioned the French solution, but I will point out that not every army that's going to fit for. And also, that is a uniquely French solution to a uniquely French problem. Because that's French speaking France. But go on.
To finish my earlier thought, in combat, ignoring the potentiality of a drone operator, the combat loading is going to be about the same, maybe slightly less, assuming nothing breaks. But if it breaks in that kind of turret, unless they want to sacrifice the advantages of going to an uncrewed turret by making uncomfortable crewed positions in case of an autoloader failure, you're not essentially, as soon as you have an autoloader failure, that tank is withdrawing from combat. The downtime maintenance is going to be a mess and is likely going to be the same or more relative to a crewed turret, because everything is going to be more densely packed. It's going to be harder to get to the maintenance items, it's going to make maintenance harder because the system is inherently more complex.
Yeah. Has anyone got any? Sorry, go on, Jahir.
Yeah, I've got a little bit to add. I would posit that we are going to see some quite uncomfortable decisions with the next generation of tank design, mostly because we have to work within the limit of MLC classifications or military load classification, specifically 60 in our case for Western European deployment. That basically means all the infrastructure in Europe and the world is rated to NATO classifications of MLC. 60 means it can take 60 tons of weight going across it. If we go too high, you lose your strategic mobility, your capacity to move from one position to another rapidly, or
Indeed.
even like tactical deployment. So we're already at a point where we're making uncomfortable trade-offs in protection speed and firepower because we've been pushing up against that MLC 60 limit for a very long time. As we all know, some people very much joke about and talk about the genuine problem of a lot of our tanks with current upgrade packages are closer to the 70 than the 60 ton mark now. So if we want to continue down the route of adequate armor protection for the crew, either we need revolutionary developments in armor technology, which I see as unlikely, or we're going to need to lower the cross-sectional area of armor overall, which I think is where the remote gun turret is going to come in. And also, to touch on drones, the KF-51 demonstrator has drones built into it, a little bay for I think it's 2 quadcopters. So it wouldn't surprise me if fiber optic drones are part of the standard layout for new upcoming generations of main battle tanks, especially in the with the world of information warfare and like battlefield data links coming in to be much more important.
Speaking of the KF-51,
I think too, you're going to have. It's going to, weirdly enough, it's going to be interesting to see what the mass adoption of electric vehicles is going to do to infrastructure, especially bridges, because for a given size class, like volume of vehicle, electric vehicles are heavier. And that's going to
I'm sorry, I must go. I'm being requested to represent the Guard in Helldivers.
Oh my.
I must answer this call.
Godspeed.
Enjoy. For Super Earth!
I do think you raise a good point with this, but I don't think it'll push the higher brackets too far.
So, sorry, Sheer. Just let me spit out the rest of this. It will be interesting to see what the impact is on the infrastructure as the average weight of vehicle goes up, and how that impacts capability with relation to strategic mobility. There's also the fact that the U.S. at least seems to be concentrating more and more on the Pacific, which is going to impact what the Army decides to do with its systems.
Yep.
I think if nations were smart and willing to spend the money, you would see essentially a re-evolution of light, medium, and heavy. They're not going to do that, but
why do you say that?
Because this way you don't have a one-size-fits-all solution that is bottlenecked by infrastructure. You have the options of differing size, weight class vehicles. To permit you to not be pigeonholed.
I mean, you're not. No. I'm just gonna come out and say no. Light tanks already exist with the capability to match MBTs for firepower. So if you need to take armor somewhere, that you if you need a direct fire artillery piece that has some level of protection and is designed for direct combat, but you can't take an MBT, light tanks and wheeled vehicles with those kind of guns exist. And for everything else, you take an MBT. You don't need to reinvent light, medium, and heavy tanks.
I would worry a lot about the cost implications of that in terms of order quantities going down and the military-industrial death spiral. I'm
Yeah.
going to put a graph in Rambling Text, which I have made for part of my dissertation, and it's overall constant cost adjusted to $2015 of various main battle tanks throughout history.
My God, Centurion is just
It is
the cheap.
scary how expensive things are getting, and that is in part a lot because of the lower and lower order quantities. So
I
unit
think there
costs
will be a
rising,
paradigm
order quantities
shift.
going down. I don't see the MBT as it stands.
No, I don't mean in terms.
currently
I was
surviving very well.
yeah.
Let-
What I was gonna say is there's gonna need to be. I think we won't see a change to the current death spiral until the aftermath of a major conflict and the aftershocks, both militarily and economic, that will bring, which might reset the economic system globally and the military paradigm globally.
Maybe. But I do think, just get back to Rue's point, I don't think it will go back to light, medium, and heavy tanks. I do think, a part of me does think that you'll see a split in MBTs.
I do think that
Because you can't have a high-speed, low-drag, highly mobile tank that's highly survivable in defensive combat, as we're seeing in Ukraine.
I would also posit that the very good points brought up about the US Army thinking much more about operating in the Pacific. Where you plan to fight is going to affect a lot of these things. For us in Europe, we're doing a lot more renewed thought about, continental conflict. So we could see where we believe our tanks are going to go in the future, maybe be in a different direction to what the Americans are looking to adopt.
Absolutely. Right.
And that, honestly, that may cause the split where you have for lack of any better phrasing, a medium and a heavy paradigm for MBTs.
I don't see it. The lights already
No,
exist.
No, Fleet,
we're not talking about lights. We're talking like sort of take the Japanese MBTs, the Type 90s, and compare them to Challenger 2s. Sort of, you see a divergence there of, okay, these MBTs have evolved to be much lighter because of the conditions they're expecting to fight in. While, for say, the European theatre, you could see the advent of a lot heavier tanks to survive on that theatre.
Yes, but I would argue that they'd still be. I don't think you'll see medium and heavy MBTs be a thing that ever exists. I think you might...
will probably never see them called medium or heavy. They will probably still be called MBTs. But when you put the stat sheets next to each other,
I think you would see something like a split between the Leopard 1 and the Chieftain. Because they're all MBTs, but they're very different.
Yeah. But there we go.
And at some point, probably the Americans are going to create an MBT for Europe and how they envision fighting in Europe, and an MBT for how they envision fighting in Southeast Asia. And that's going to create a split.
No, the US Army, from what I'm aware, doesn't really plan to use its MBTs in a Pacific conflict. At least not in the sort of Pacific-style war they're thinking they're going to fight. If they're going to be using...
the rationale for the drawdown for taking the tanks away from the Marines as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think...
But...
and also, I can't really see that need arising either. If they got rid of M10 Booker...
You're missing my point. My point is that you'll only see the divergence in name if the Americans do that. The Americans have to split off in two separate MBTs
I'm with you.
For two different theatres.
I'm with you. I'm on it. I'm on it like a carb on it with you.
And again, from some of the discussions I've had, it seems like there may be a Booker with the serial numbers filed off program put forward by the DoD.
That would be funny.
Simply because they've invested the money in it.
Build it.
They have a working. They've done the same thing they did with the Zumwalt, where they paid to get a production line, and now they aren't going to be using it.
Yeah.
So you may actually see something that's absolutely not the Booker Honest Congress
Please, honestly, we
coming
swear.
to service anyway.
Hi, Dragon.
Good evening.
So, next question is a really interesting one, but unfortunately it only ever ends one way. Typical Gunnery Officer asks, today's Japanese defense ship Kaga and IJN Kaga going head to head. Both are in range of IJN Kaga 1942's aircraft, and IJN Kaga is escorted by 4 destroyers, 1 Kuma-type cruiser and 1 Otago-type cruiser, while JSDS Kaga doesn't have any screening vessels, but a full complement of F-35s and helicopters. Also, but Imperial Japanese Navy Kaga knows where the Japanese Self-Defense Force Kaga is. Which one would survive the battle, the IJN Kaga and her task group, or the lone Japanese defense ship Kaga? The Japanese defense ship, and it's not even funny. Every single aircraft and every single ship of the Imperial Japanese Navy in that action dies. Just
Yeah, the only advantage that the IJN forces have is that they are purely visual targeting. That's really the only advantage the IJN has.
yeah.
So if they can get close enough, quick enough, there is a chance that they could score hits.
There isn't.
But with guided F-35s and radar vectoring, it's gonna be a pure luck more than skill or judgment.
I mean, Ruinon, even if they get close, there's no chance they score hits. Unless the cruisers have gotten into gun range. With aircraft, Kaga has 2 CRAM and 2 Phalanx. There's no way any of those aircraft are getting into launch distance with any of their weapons. Even if
The US will shred them.
I was talking more towards the gun and torpedo range. If they can get into that range quickly enough, they could score hits. But I wouldn't bet a lot of money on it.
Yeah. And I mean,
It's going to be a luck thing.
Yeah.
And it's going to be how many air-launched anti-shipping munitions does Kaga carry for her F-35s, and how quickly can those things get fitted and launched into engagement range?
I mean, that is true, but I would point out that Kaga is fast enough. She can just go, oh, they're shell splashes.
HE?
Yeah. Plus, her listed speed is 30 knots plus. So if she cranks up her gas turbines to full pelt and just goes, "See ya, motherfuckers, I'm out of here."
Yeah, but if she's beaten feet to get out of gunfire range, she may not be able to launch and recover aircraft.
With F-35, I don't think F-35 is a platform. Sorry, F-35B.
Wind direction is going to matter. Wind direction always matters.
Yeah. You still need to have air going through the intakes when the aircraft is in that vertical.
And
Yeah, but if they're doing a rolling takeoff, then surely that will be fine. If they're doing a rolling
No,
takeoff off the...
It's still going to matter. Even for helicopters, wind direction matters. It's less of an impact, but it still matters. That's why you see that even rooftop helo pads have windsocks on them.
Yeah. But, okay, fair enough. So if, like the only niche case scenario in which damage can be inflicted is if they get the jump on her and get into gun range. But with Kaga's, but with Kaga's radar, and honestly, even if we take radar out of the equation, even if she basically survives being jumped by, which she will do, the air attack, which she just flat out will do, it'll be a massacre. At that point, she can just go, okay, we've been attacked. Where do they come in from? Right, okay. Get me like a suite of 4 of our F-35s fitting with targeting pods, and send them aloft on an arc in that direction. Because I'm sorry to say, even without radar, the targeting pods these aircraft can carry have some pretty gnarly cameras on them.
Yeah, I mean, and I need to be clear that your situation, you're talking about surface search radar, not targeting radar.
Yeah.
Because if you take out targeting radar, all the close-in weapon systems cease to function.
Yes, I'm talking about surface search radar and air search radar.
Essentially, the only way for the IJN to get a win in this situation is they roll 6s and the Maritime Self-Defense Force rolls 1s. That's literally the only way they're going to get a win.
No, honestly, is
it one-to-one ship buys, or is the one IJN Karga escorted?
No, IJN Karga is escorted, but that doesn't matter. She has four destroyers, 1 Kuma-type cruiser, and 1 Otago-type cruiser.
Okay, so they're greater than 30-knot cruisers.
It doesn't.
No, Kuma's not.
Yeah,
Kuma
is. Yeah, Kuma is. Yeah, Kuma's a plus 30-knot ship. But it doesn't
and
matter.
so is Otago, and so is destroyers.
It doesn't matter. It fundamentally doesn't
Kuma's
matter.
Kuma's are 36 knots.
Yeah, it fundamentally doesn't matter. Because they haven't. Because I literally took radar out to give the IJN aircraft a fighting chance, but the question doesn't. So even if the escorts of IJN Karga ramp up to flank speed and try and catch or get close with JDS Karga, they're not going to close before she detects them and launches a strike against them. Even if she has no anti-ship munitions aboard and only has basic HE frag bombs of, let's say, 1,000-pound range, the F-35s are still going to be able to plant those incredibly accurately on those cruisers and destroyers as they come in.
So when you say basic, you're still talking JDAM when you say basic then.
Yeah, basically, yeah. Because in the nicest way, F-35s are not rigged to dive bomb, at least to our knowledge. And trying to dumb bomb a moving warship has always been challenging, shall we say. The biggest problem is going to be if Imperial Kaga's escorts can get within gun range of Defense Force Kaga. If they can get within gun range, Defense Force Kaga is going to the bottom. Kaga, not Conga. I mean, like I say, I still think she can run until such a time as she can break contact. Because the IJN ships don't have radar. She does.
But they know where she is.
They do, but even like she's going to detect them long before they even see her. So she can just go, right, the surface action group's coming in, or a surface action group's coming in. I'm just going to ramp up to plus 30 knots. I'm going. Bye. I'm breaking contact.
I said if they are able to get into gun range.
Yes, if they can, by some miracle, there is a possibility they might be able to sink her.
No, they will sink her.
I'm not sure they can sink her before she gets out of range.
If they can get within gun range,
they will sink her.
A modern carrier of any stripe is not designed to withstand 8-inch armor piercing.
No,
it is designed to withstand close explosive hits and some guided munitions. 8-inch armor piercing is going to be a significant emotional event for that vessel.
It's going to be a less significant emotional event than most anti-ship missiles would be. Far less significant.
Yes, but a carrier only gets hit by 1 or 2 of those. JFDF cargo is going to be hit by 8 of them every 8 to 10 seconds.
That is a very, very, very generous hit rate.
Yeah, that's optimistic, but at the same time, the more hits it takes, the less it will be able to see and maneuver, and therefore it will take more hits.
Even if it's just 1 hit, like every 30 seconds, or even 1 hit every minute, that's still going to be significantly affecting. Oh, basically, it means you can't be launching any aircraft or anything. You're still taking consistent hits. If you get hit by a salvo of like an anti-ship missile, you can be reasonably confident there's not more en route for a while. You're just not going to be in this case.
Can I throw a spanner into the works, like I always tend to? So, being on a ship, I've worked on a ship that has had phalanx. I know for a fact that there is a certain saturation point where Phalanx will no longer work and will have a hissy fit and die. It'll also run out of ammunition. Also, she got CRAM on board on the cargo. Yeah, she does. So 2 CRAMs, that's what? 10, 20 missiles roughly, give or take. That's as a rough, like, out there. You're not going to be able to, unfortunately, reload a Phalanx, or both Phalanx and both CRAMs in time to stop an entire wave of Japanese aircraft from the cargo. Now, yes, they will be detected early on. And yes, that will give the JMSDF cargo time to start prepping jets to be going up for air-to-air combat. But what's the standard like wave you can see from the IJN cargo? It's like 40, 50 aircraft roughly? Multiple waves?
I was going to say around about 30 a wave, but yeah, we can go with that.
Yeah, okay. So if cargo goes full strike, the Izumo class is not going to be able to take that. She's going down no matter what before the cruisers even get into bloody shooting range, because they'll just be overwhelmed, and that's it. Bye bye cargo. But that's from a purely militaristic, modern day technicality that I've understood about carriers and actually working on one.
If they go with the saturation strike and follow through and all that, but what are we thinking about the psychological effects of just watching a very large portion of your strike package get shredded before you even get particularly close?
I mean, the IJN Flying Corps did kind of experience that in World War II organically, so...
That is true. I suppose it depends how many F-35s they can get up to do longer range interception before they get to CRAM and CRAM.
It also depends on what alert this aircraft are at. If they're at alert 5, and if they're deck parked, you're probably looking at maybe from detection, say for instance, if they're over the horizon, maybe 100 miles, you're probably looking at, if she's fully loaded, 10 jets, maybe 12. But that's a rough guess, because obviously they've only got 10 at the moment. I can't really tell you.
Right, folks.
Oh.
Oh, it's the Dutchman. Excellent. Fantastic. Marvellous. Brilliant. 10 out of 10.
Well, on my bitches.
Anyway, so, Gunner Officer asks, again, good lord, this man is on a roll tonight.
He's always on a roll. He's your most prolific questioner, unless YouTube Minecraft watcher's having a really good day.
Yes.
Why
did the US keep on using the M60 instead of switching to the FN MAG designed M240 for their 7.62 light MG, especially for coax guns on AFVs for machine gunners and mounted trucks? Do you think the US thought that the M60 is outdated and inferior to the MAG design? Honestly, the MAG was better than the M60 at that point. It just kind of was, and it was newer.
Also, glorious NATO standardization.
Indeed.
Yes. Fun fact.
A mixture of NATO standardization, and they could buy it in bulk cheaply. If you can't buy it in bulk cheap. Go on.
I was going to say, why did you take my phone? But then I found my phone, so I can no longer blame you for taking my phone.
I'm in your walls. I'm not a thief. Get it right.
She just steals
That's
your
where
data.
those $12 came from. Okay, quick question before we continue. Am I the only person here that wants to see Fleet do a hill climb in a Rimac?
Hey?
Sounds amusing.
I just realised I'm surrounded by savages. None will get that.
It's okay. We can quickly look this up and pretend what you said was funny.
Haha.
What? Anyway, so people who know shit about guns, FN Mag, M60, Banana Barama, MacGuffin.
FN mag better, longer mean time between stoppages.
Yes.
FN Mag, and they could get them hella cheap.
Yeah. Also, as said, integration within NATO standardization is just helpful.
It was more how cheap they were.
Oh, that's partly going to be why they were so cheap, with such a wide production lines and so.
Steve Clark
degree, yeah.
asks, Steve Clark asks, the oldest real facts about a battle you know about from memory. No wikis. Well, for me, that's probably the facts that my dad told me about the Battle of Waterloo. That the French were trying to inflict a defeat on the British before the British were reinforced by the Prussians, which, as he told me at the time, were kind of like Germans before Germany was a thing. Bear in mind, this was a very young fleet. And the British held out bravely. Napoleon, at the final moments, committed the guards to the battle. And Wellington had some of his soldiers lying down, and then he made them stand up, and they shot the guard. The guard retreated for the first time ever, and then the Prussians showed up to absolutely slap them in the face with a sledgehammer.
That's the question.
The oldest real facts about a battle you know from memory. Is this like the oldest memory we have?
That's what I'm assuming.
I mean, because if it's the oldest facts you know, is it like the oldest battle that we know about? Because if it's the oldest facts we know about from memory, then it's probably going to be Richard of York gave battle in vain.
Foxo, I am not the oldest fact you know. Don't even go there.
Well, I was about to say, I was going to talk about the time you met the Emperor on Terra, but
No, I didn't meet the Emperor. I met a very egotistical and highly charismatic old guy who
Malcador. Anyway,
gave me a headache.
The issue with Richard of York gave battle in vain is, to me, that's just an electrical term.
What? Huh? What?
The whole thing of Richard of York gave battle in vain is used in the UK for resistance on resistors, because the way that goes is the same way as the numbers for a resistor.
Yeah, the color.
Depending on
Do you
colours.
guys use color code? You guys gotta
Yeah.
have to use the color bands because that's
Yeah.
international.
Color bands.
Yeah, but
Right,
Richard of York
but
gave battle in
Richard
vain, so
finally
like,
did
it's a
something,
rainbow mnemonic.
And that the Richard of York gave battle in vain perfectly lines up for the letter.
Battle of Agincourt for me, but I don't know.
I suppose the thing is, can you quote the fact? Like, what can you remember about the battle? That's got to be the thing, hasn't it? Like, what can you remember without looking it up? Like, what can you go? Ah, yes, I know this. Speak.
I've been told I'm too
right,
old.
my oldest one comes from when I was a proper kid. And my dad is really into Vikings. That's where I get it from. And we were driving to the airport, and he recounted the battle in De Bruges in the 11th century between Basilius Michael against the Petchings, basically steppe peoples, and how it's recorded that the Byzantine, the steppe nomads were camped in a ditch, and the bowmen and the cavalry of the Byzantines couldn't effectively get rid of them due to the terrain. So Emperor Michael and Empress Zoe came around with their Varangian guard, who as heavy infantry were able to get over the difficult terrain and rout the steppe nomads out of Bulgaria.
Did you just say the Ferengian Guard?
The Varangian.
Okay.
Yeah.
Had to confirm that one because I got very confused for a second.
I
What
might
do the
have
rules
gotten
of acquisition say here?
What? How did we get to the... All right, I feel like we are getting significantly off topic here. Right, we should probably
No,
move
Ronan
on.
just made a
No,
comment.
no, carry on.
Because I talked about
I
the
asked-
Varangian
I
guard.
asked the question because I genuinely didn't know if Star Trek had just rustled around in history to find a name or if I was old, deaf, and misheard something. It turns
What
out
about-
I was old, deaf, and misheard something.
Because it's also one of the first battles I learned a lot about because an artist my dad really likes has made an old English song about it, and in the last couple of years has redone it.
Nice. Right. YouTube Minecraft Watcher, what in the panel's favourite opinion is their favourite galleon from history? If you want the honest answer, it's really outside of my wheelhouse. I don't have favourites from that era. Favourites for me only come in when you talk about something with an engine.
Does
What, you don't have a favorite ship of the line?
how
Well,
how
I
late-
have things I like, but no favourites.
How late do we see galleons in use? Like, does
It depends. The difference between early galleons and late Carracks are basically non-existent.
does the three ships that carried the initial Jamestown settlement over count?
No.
Okay.
At that point, you're talking proper early Carracks there. But
Does the
I say
Newport ship technically count?
I suppose, since galleons are quite a specific sort of time period to talk about, the favourite one for me would have to be Revenge.
Ah, yes, the I am going to spin in a circle and shoot everyone! Partially because everyone's around me and I can't miss.
And we're surrounded. Excellent. Now we can fire in any direction.
Oh, for God's sake, I knew that bloody quote was going to come up.
we have you surrounded, at least from this side.
Oh my God, we're all just on a roll tonight, folks. We're all just on
Hey,
a roll.
am I wrong? If you are surrounded, you can fire in any direction and still hit the enemy.
Yes.
So from a certain point of view, being surrounded is the optimal fighting position.
You're starting to sound like me in Central Night City from last night.
No, you weren't surrounded. You had the high ground. Completely different thing.
Anyway,
I was surrounded. though, with the
Dragon,
high
you
ground.
haven't given Dragon, do you have a horse in this race? Want to give you a chance to get your oar in?
You have a galleon
Ha.
in this race.
A galleon in this
I
race,
feel like we're
then.
mixing metaphors here. Anyway, go ahead, Dragon, please.
There was a long silence.
As the unbridled rage of the dragon finally came for.
Oh, he's gonna walk about them for the next question.
Fair enough. Next question. Poseidon. Poseidon.
Right, Ronan, before we continue. Bone meal. Right, Ronan. Do you remember the battle that Bone Meal's put forward, and what was it like?
Oh my God.
Dear God, now what?
Because I'm pretty sure you're a retainer for the horses, there, weren't you?
Oy vey, please no.
No, I worked on the arquebuses, but otherwise that picture is pretty accurate to how it was.
Right. Anyway. Poseidon 7307. It's 1939 August, and all carriers across the world suddenly disappear, along with the knowledge on how to build them and why. How might some of the large naval battles change? You're going to see a lot more. Basically, you're going to see a lot more capital ship fights because there's nothing else. The only way to put ships down will be with gunfire and torpedoes, obviously, but still.
I suppose, assuming nothing else changes, the Bismarck gets away, so we have to sink it another time.
Yeah, although
You're gonna have this is actually okay. The problem is the how to build them and why, i.e., why you would build them. That means you have a fundamentally different understanding of reconnaissance.
I mean, because the thing is, we haven't gotten rid of aircraft, so
Do we still have catapult launchers?
that apparently that's
But
what it said. It doesn't say carriers don't exist.
But the problem is the whole reason why you start down the carrier tech tree, for lack of any better phrasing, is because you need you want a dedicated aerial reconnaissance platform that can also do strike. That's why you start that technological line.
Yes, that is true, and I'm not denying that. But I am gonna put the brakes on you simply because if we go down that rabbit hole, we're never gonna get to the meat and potatoes of the question. I
Yeah,
feel
but
like
the problem is
we need to narrow our focus and ignore that tangent.
But no, it's not a tangent, Fleet. It's in question.
It's an important establishing fact.
Yeah, if it wasn't in the question, I would completely agree with you. But my answer would be, well, they would start rapidly trying to rebuild the design knowledge to build carriers. But if you do not have the why anymore as to why you build a carrier, then you very likely are going to wonder, why do you have catapult launchers on your cruisers and battleships? And you will remove them because you don't see the point to why you would have them.
I disagree, because fundamentally, aircraft aboard ship were not just something that grew out. Yeah, yes, naval aviation did obviously go down the line of carriers, as we know, but like you say, scouting and strike, that was the reason that carriers really became what they were. And it also says carriers. So in theory, the logic and need for seaplane tenders and floatplane tenders was not gotten rid of, because those are not carriers in this sense. Yes, they are carriers, but they're not flat deck carriers that do scout, fleet air defense, and strike, which is what the question is referring to.
But you're still fundamentally removing scouting as an element.
No, why? The carriers do not have a monopoly on aerial scouting for the battle fleet.
Yes, but especially when they are developing carrier doctrine, which evolves into a more strike-focused role, the primary use of aircraft is for reconnaissance.
It is, but the carrier is an outgrowth of the seaplane and flying boat tender. Those will still exist.
Whose job was scouting.
Yes, yes,
and was replaced because they weren't particularly good at it.
They weren't replaced.
I would posit that people would be very confused about why the carriers were missing, if they even remember what carriers are. They would look at the catapult-launched aircraft and say something along the lines of, "Oh, those are nifty. I wonder what I can use those for," and then quickly realise why carriers are a thing which they would want to have again. Because it's a pretty simple, we have this capability, this is what we can use it for, oh shit, that's useful. There's nothing to say that the thought process of redeveloping carriers and why wouldn't be able to show up again.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it doesn't, like, I absolutely get where Ruinon's coming from, but the problem with her line of thinking is that the carrier comes after the seaplane tender and the flying boat tender. So it doesn't have a...
I think the large impact of this comes in the planning assumption.
I'm already having a stroke.
I would ask you if you want me to use your phone to call an ambulance, but I just remembered I'm in America now and you're wall.
Have I fundamentally misunderstood things
Can you
here?
afford it?
Because you are talking about flat deck carriers, right? Because that's what the question's talking about, right?
No,
yes, but
could you
they
please
have
speak
raised
up?
A very interesting point about the loss of like the doctrinal knowledge and so as to why. So a lot of the rationale for building carriers was reconnaissance, right?
Yes.
That leaves a large recon-based hole in the build strategy and thus fighting capacity of the world's navies.
Mm-hmm.
That, I think we can all agree, is something which is going to be a very large problem in this world. And I personally think we would see, at least in the short term, people going, oh shit, we really need something to solve this reconnaissance gap. And I think surface search radar would become a very large imperative.
Right. I think I understand. Ruinon is not saying that aircraft wouldn't be based in fleets, nor that they wouldn't be based on ships. What she's saying is that while the can I? No,
let him finish. He might actually find the truffle. Let's see if he can find the truffle.
That's not what she's saying, Foxo. What she's saying is, yes, there is a capability gap. That's not what Ruinon's saying. What she's saying is, no. What she's saying is that the aviation at sea is going to be concentrated on seaplane and flying boat tender ships, with there being no knowledge of or very little knowledge of catapult launched aircraft aboard things like cruisers and battleships. And the reason for this, which I had forgotten and Sheer reminded me of the connection of, is that in a lot of navies, those aircraft and that capability come out of either having carriers but not wanting to tie them up with reconnaissance, or not having carriers / not having enough carriers to be everywhere and wanting your general ships to have reconnaissance. Have I got that right, Ruinon?
What my point is that if you are removing the Y of carriers, you are gutting the doctrine. You are removing wholesale the doctrine of aerial reconnaissance. It no longer exists in the navies.
This is where we run into the problem again. Because can we both agree that the carrier in the question is referring to the flat deck rolling launch and recovery aircraft carrier? Are we both on the same page?
But
okay.
Her point is... No. I've got to piss that 50 off. No. Her point isn't the fact the fleet will have no aerial reconnaissance. It's the fact that the vast majority of it is tied up in flat deck aircraft carriers by this point. The sea tenders and the seaplane tenders are on their way out. And there is very limited number. They don't make up the vast majority of recon capability and keep recon doctrine at this point.
And additionally, you are retroactively, because of how the question is phrased, at August 1st, 1939, Thanos snaps his fingers, and all carriers and the doctrinal reasons for why you build carriers disappear, which means we have retroactively removed the concept of aerial reconnaissance from navies. So they will be missing their carriers, and then they will have catapult-launched aircraft and seaplane tenders, and wonder what the blue blazes are they going to do with it. Plus or minus the gunnery spotting elements on the heavy gun warships, depending upon whether or not you consider gunnery spotting to be part of reconnaissance or not. And because you no longer have that doctrine established, or the concept that you need that doctrine established in the navies, that is going to make a radical impact on how they conduct the war. Now, there is a question about whether or not this touches on notionally carrier capable but not carrier equipped navies, e.g. Kriegsmarine and Regia Marina. For the U.S. Royal Navy, IJN, and French navies, they are all fighting with a radically different doctrine because they are losing the aerial reconnaissance portion of it. It has been retroactively removed from their playbook per the terms of the question.
They have lost the advanced version of 30 years of experience. They have been reduced to 1914 levels of aerial reconnaissance, which did exist, and the nascent doctrine, it does exist for aerial reconnaissance in the fleet. But you are correct. But Ruinon is correct in the fact that that is a huge capability gap, but they will have the capability to recover the idea that fuck, recon is important, mate.
Okay, now Foxo.
Right, can we just move on? Because this is turning into an evergreen situation.
What do you mean?
We're going in circles.
I mean, we're not.
No.
We're kind of established the
fact that you're trying to share a canal and one that gets turned sideways, and we're not getting anywhere.
We
Could
are.
I just posit some things on the battles then?
Okay.
Because the most obvious change is going to be if there's no carriers, and this all happens in 39, then the capacity for Pearl Harbor, the attack on Taranto, etc., are all gone. So any fleet or navy which significantly invested in a carrier capability in the interwar period is going to be significantly hamstrung by that then vanishing. So it means we're very much in a situation where it's going to go back to battleships. And even if the doctrine of spotting in the Navy vanishes, we've been using planes to spot for the Army for a good while, so gunnery spotting planes on catapults will still make sense to people, in my reading of the question. So it's going to just be a very interesting position where the most modern vessels on both sides of the conflict, they were historically the carriers and the smaller vessels like the cruisers and so. The battleships largely were grandfathered in. And it's going to be a battle where these grandfathered in battleships are once again the principal elements of surface combat.
Yeah, it is going to be hell.
And I would say for World War II, no, the battleships were still the principal combat element. We see this a lot, depending on theatre. The biggest theatre where this is not the case is, the Pacific. But if you look towards more European and Mediterranean and Indian Ocean, the battleship is the almost undisputed king of most engagements.
Yeah. I can argue that in the Atlantic, I'd say it's more 60-40 in favor of the battleship, which is more even. In the Pacific, it's 80-20 in favor of the carrier, but the Med, it is basically 90-10 in favor of the battleship.
I wouldn't even say 60-40 for the Pacific.
No, I said 80. No, 80-20.
No, for the Atlantic, I meant, sorry. I wouldn't even say, because you said 60-40 for the Atlantic. I wouldn't even say that.
I'd say 60% submarines, 40% battleships.
Carriers were not that important until you get escort carriers supporting convoys. And even then, you've got what? Hunt for Bismarck, Ark Royal manages to take out the rudder.
I would argue that...
What other engagement in the Atlantic were carriers really involved in?
The entirety of the Norway campaign.
I
wouldn't necessarily. I would say that is. I would then let's say that's the Norway campaign more than necessarily the Atlantic. But
okay, fair enough.
The Norway campaign is treated as part of the Battle for the Atlantic.
Yeah,
no, it's not. No, Battle for Atlantic was different. Battle for Atlantic's a very specific thing.
Okay. Let me rephrase that, because when I said Battle of the Atlantic, I was referring to everything.
That's why I said Europe. See, that is why I said European theatre. Mediterranean, Indian Ocean.
Yeah, so European theatre, I'd say 60-40. And the reason I say that is not because of the engagements they were in, but how many times when you see the Allies putting together heavy escort forces for Arctic convoys, strike groups in the Atlantic European theatre, they always have a carrier with them. They have battleships, and probably more battleships than carriers, but a carrier is always with them.
Yeah, but I would counter that with, okay, what asset in the Royal Navy was the thing that denied the German surface fleet to come out to fight or do operations?
The battleships.
The battleships and the cruisers. carriers were desperately pleased to
What?
get the attention of the Luftwaffe. No, the carriers were desperately trying not to get the attention of the Luftwaffe.
That is kind of true. I feel like there's a bigger deep dive to be had there, but I would just like to focus on. So I think to finish off this question, we need
just
let's
move on.
no. I think to do the question justice, we do have to pivot back to battles, and I do want to discuss a few little key points here because I feel like that is important to make sure we do the question justice. We've had our tangents, but we need to actually do the question justice now. So, and besides, it is actually a fairly interesting question. It's focused a lot of discussion, and I do love those. And to be fair, we are actually getting towards the end. There's not that many questions left, so we can afford to be a little bit generous with our
We
time.
can just take more questions.
Yeah, but I like to discuss questions that I like to discuss, and everyone else seems to be having a good time discussing it as well.
You did on Friday. Oh, you did it on Monday, sorry.
But I like doing this. It's my show.
Anyway, moving on swiftly.
No.
before I
Whoa, hold on. Whoa. I didn't say we're moving on. I wanted to finish this question.
Move on.
It's my show. I decide what happens.
I will hypnotize you to move.
I
the
am
hell on.
pulling rank.
There are exactly two things we still need to discuss on this question.
Yes.
One, the very obvious thing which people want us to talk about, the Yamatos in the Pacific.
Yes.
Two, the battle for the Atlantic and the anti-U-boat campaign. The lack of escort carriers there is going to be huge.
Escort seaplane tenders? Question mark.
Again,
Probably
they're
not.
not going to have escort seaplane tender.
They won't be able to
That's
build
not
them.
aerial.
What you'll have, if anything, is actually something which is more along the lines of a refueling tender for something like a short Sunderland.
Yeah.
But that is very different from what was being described.
I mean, you can have that, but I mean, using aircraft for using land-based aircraft for anti-submarine warfare and using seaplanes for anti-submarine warfare was something that's known about. And it's not going to be that hard to make a jump between these things that carry aircraft that have catapults to launch them off. What if we use them proactively to, go and be with the convoys? It's not that big of a leap. But also, I do want to point...
Fleet. If only there wasn't an entire crisis throughout the war in the Atlantic about them not being able to make long enough ranged aircraft to do that from land or coastal regions. If only there wasn't a massive crisis about that.
But that's the whole... Anyway. But also, I would like to point out that in regards to... I think we need to talk...
Mid-Atlantic gap.
I feel like there is...
It's not like long-range aircraft are hard.
That wasn't... No, that wasn't what I was talking about, long-range aircraft. I'm about things like... what's it called? What's the British funny boy that has wheels and also is a flying boat? Has single
The
engine.
Walrus.
Thank you! Yeah, things like the Walrus, about that size. Walrus, Kingfisher. Like, put them on a boat with some catapults and a crane. Give them some depth charges, and off you go. Boom.
I'm gonna
Escort.
put depth charges on a walrus.
I think they could carry...
They could carry 2 depth charges or 4 like 50 kilogram bombs.
They were 100-pound depth charges, weren't they, Dragon, I think, with the Walrus?
Something along those lines.
But anyway, and I also think you'll see a return to lighter than aircraft for longer distance patrol work.
No, you won't.
No,
I
because we know
would
what happens
say-
in this situation.
Yeah, we
The
lost
submarine
the
wins.
industry for that as well. I'd say the submarine is definitely a much, much more potent threat, and we will need to put a lot more resources into the Battle of the Atlantic in terms of conventional escorts like destroyers.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Also-
destroyer escorts.
Also, something else to consider, since Shia mentioned it earlier about the Yamatos. Yamatos not actually that big of a concern, because as soon as people actually start learning about them, which is pretty quick, and if the carriers are all gone, well, A, you no longer have the whole slowdown of capital ships, because all of a sudden we need more capital ships to cover more area.
And there are free
Yeah,
slips now.
Mm-hmm. Free slips, free areas. But also, it's very likely you just see what happens is, right, so this happens in 1939, carrier's gone, lay down the lions, please.
Yeah.
Lay down the Montanas, the short.
Well, no, you wouldn't even say lay down Montanas. You probably see the US still do their thing. But no, the reason why it's easier for the English is because there's literally 36, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43 designs for the Lion. They can just go, we're building this now.
Yeah, you might
We
see
have the slips, we have the capability,
Yeah.
do it.
You might see the Japanese.
Okay.
The Japanese do have also spare slips as well themselves now, so they can build. They're not going to be extra Yamatos, but expect to see some form of extra capital ship construction from the Japanese, whether that's something like B-65 or some sort of Yamato run through the printer at like minus 50% size. But again, I mean, all of the powers that were building carriers but are not now are going to have extra slips available to build capital ships, and they will.
And it means that the Americans can project power much more significantly and effectively from Pearl Harbor using their battleships to contend
Oh yeah.
much more effectively in the Southeast Asian theater.
Yep. I also think that it's going to make the Italian fleet a lot better when it's feeling a little bit brave. Thing is, this is the thing. The Axis basically have to push their advantage as early as they can. So, because the thing is, as you say, Dragon is right. The Lions will be laid down. The Americans will be working on stuff like the Iowas, the Montanas, or other capital ships besides that. God knows what they'll use the extra slips for. But the
Actually,
Axis...
there's one minor addendum I'll make to your thing there, Fleet.
Yep.
You probably don't see the Iowa.
Mm.
Because you no longer have the high-speed surface combatants to work with.
The reason for the Iowas existing was very much to deal with a gap the US felt it had, and that wasn't for a carrier escort, that was to have a ship that could outrun and outgun something like a Congo.
Yes,
the
but now you don't have to build something nearly as big.
No, the whole point with the Iowas was that they could also be standard battleships in addition to their other role.
Yes, and what are your other ships you're building at this time?
Do you mean after the
In
Iowas
reality?
or before?
In reality, before the Iowas.
The North Carolina.
No, as in battleships. North Carolina's, South Dakota's.
Yes.
Or the preceding class.
Which are about 27.5 to 28 knots.
Yes.
Even if you want a fast element, you're no longer pushing for the same speeds. You're probably looking at Iowa's now dropping down to 31, 32 knots more than likely, because you don't have to have that push.
No,
The Congos most certainly can't keep up with that these days, especially post-refit.
They can do... The Congos were 30 plus knots post refit.
Yes.
And
They were 30 knots on a short load, which means they were 30 knots empty.
No, the Congos were 30 knots full load post refit.
Now, but do you need to go for this 33, 34 knot design?
Yes, you do.
No.
Because the whole point is to comfortably overhaul the Congos with
32
stamina.
knots will get you that.
No, not really. Not with stamina to spare, and not to really quickly close them down.
If you want stamina to spare, then going slightly slower is better for you.
Yes, but you've not changed the environment. You've not changed the reason for the Iowa's existence. You
have how they came out OTL.
There is...
Because you've taken away half of their use profile. That's going to change any design.
The carriers were only ever a tertiary concern. The primary reason for that speed was to catch the Iowas catch the Congos easily. Plus that 34 knot flat out piling on the...
I wish Clark was here.
He'd agree with me. You've not changed the reasoning for the Iowa's existence significantly enough to drop them from that speed. Also, it's useful to have that level of speed strategically.
But you've now also made a unit that does not function with the rest of the fleet.
You've made 4 to 6 units that
could say they're running all out. What other capital element do you have that is in the same speed bracket?
4 to 6 hours.
Nothing.
But counter argument of all, Hood. Yes, but to be brutally honest, the Americans
Royal Navy despise the fact they only got one Admiral class.
Yes, but
also the US are going to look at Hood and go, yeah, 20, 30-year-old battle cruiser.
Yeah, but no. What he's saying is that the Royal Navy also had a section of its battle line that it used as a, the battle line, a section of its fleet, which was a bunch of capital assets that were significantly faster than the rest of the battle fleet. So the rest of the fleet.
But correction, the battle cruisers weren't part of the battle fleet.
I said fleet. I corrected myself.
Yeah, battle fleet. They weren't.
So, yes, but the Iowas are part of the fleet. They can be part of the battle fleet, but they're part of the US fleet.
But they're designed to take part in the line of battle.
Yes,
They're
but that doesn't...
They no longer have.
But that doesn't... So, you're telling me that...
You'll likely see them be able to scale the design back a bit from what it needs and end up diverting it to elsewhere.
This is idiotic in the extreme. There's no reason to scale them down. You need that
Yeah, there is.
That higher
No,
top...
there is. Right, there is. Because the Iowas are pushing the absolute... So if you don't need the extremities, you don't take the extremities. That way you get a ship that can...
In a world...
You are
In a world where there are no carriers in the Pacific, having a ship that does 34 knots flat out and can therefore cruise at 28 is a massive benefit.
Cruising at 28.
It is, but going from my memory, which is questionable, part of the Iowa class's design brief was to be able to keep formation with the carriers while they were conducting flight ops. And
Yes.
in 39, they are still, to my knowledge, not quite finalized on the Iowa design yet.
They won.
So you've now just removed one of the reasons why you're being designed for this speed.
I could still
And you probably see one of the slower, better protected designs for the tonnage that was designed to work alongside the battle fleet.
No,
You probably still see them going 32 knots.
I suppose that's only...
You just don't see them pushing for 34, 35.
Can we settle for 33 in the middle?
No.
Why? Because why push, generally why settle for 33?
Again, higher top speed, higher transit speed.
But
it matters.
Effectiveness of being able to push to that speed. It is much cheaper tonnage and horsepower wise to go for 32 than to go for 33. Remember how much you're having to add here for each knot of speed here.
Yes, I am aware, but obviously good putting that in there.
And overall, the 33 knots is going 1 knot faster is not going to be that much of an improvement over going 32.
I changed reply to Gunnar. So I'm not saying Iowa is shit. I'm saying that she was a very good ship for her design requirements, but she's a mediocre to poor design in this timeline because half of her design requirements that she makes significant compromises for don't exist.
Yeah, I mean,
Just to clear that up.
All right, okay. I will, to avoid us continuing this, begrudgingly accept the premise. But what I will say is, I just want to highlight a point that's not about the speed. You do say that a design that keeps up with the battle line generally will be accepted instead. I still think that you'll see 2 tranches. I think the US will do 2 tranches. You'll have a tranche off the Iowa, which is your mobile wing, and then the successor to South Dakota, which is Montana, as we know. Or something slightly different than Montana.
I would love to agree with you there, apart from one minor issue. Because what you're saying makes sense. Would you like to know what doesn't...
Look at the Alaska shape.
No. Would you like to know what doesn't make sense?
What?
The US Congress.
Yeah. He wins on that one.
If you want that second tranche, you'll definitely have the designs. The designs are happening one way or another. But now you're going to have to if you want that second tranche to actually be built, you have to convince them that we need it.
And Alaska shaped hole in that argument of.
I mean, to be fair,
you want the fast capital ship roll, just build an upgun in Alaska.
I mean, on the one hand, the Alaska-shaped hole exists, but on the other hand, that only works against war scenarios involving Japan. It doesn't work against Britain, it doesn't work against Germany, and it doesn't work against Italy. Because even a hypothetical upgunned Alaska is going to get slapped by Littorio or Bismarck. So while yes,
that's like saying Renown would get slapped by Littorio, like.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. That's not a counter to my question.
But it is, because why you said no.
Why? So the answer to that would be, why build a class of supercruisers, and which cost almost as much as these much better battleships, when we can have this tranche of faster battleships for slightly more cost that can fight any of the fast combatants we're likely to face from anybody else.
By getting rid of carriers, you've reintroduced the battlecruiser role for sea control.
Yes, and because the U.S. Navy, even when you look at the South Dakotas and the North Carolinas, tends to go for the slower, tends to pay for armor with speed. The Iowas are weird because they actually don't get an increase in protection or firepower, but do get an increase in speed.
Yeah, the Iowa, compared to the previous designs, basically pays 10,000 tons of weight for 6 knots, which feels quite extreme in this scenario, so I would expect a middle path.
I think I'm actually going to go even further than Dragon. I think, and I think Dragon will probably agree with me here when I say it, a 30-knot ship, which is as fast as the contemporaries, so it's as fast as the Congos when they're light load, it's as fast as Littorio, it's as fast as Hood at this point with all of her damage, from just being worn and torn, and it's as fast as the Geneisen, as Scharnhorsts and the Bismarcks. Would you agree with that, Dragon? Because at that point, you're wiping another 2 knots of speed off, which is going to bring the cost down yet further. And at that point, but it is still significant enough of an increase that you could probably justify it. Although, to be fair, given what's going on, that might just be the jump in battle line speed. Since the treaties are now gone, the US might just go, okay, I guess everyone else is building battleships of around 30 knots. Guess we kind of have to go the same way.
Everyone isn't, though.
The British
Everyone's building around 28.
The British are with the Lions. The Germans are with the
British are building around 28 for the Lions.
No, the first designs for the Lions are 30-knot ships. We discussed this. The first design for the Lion class was a 30-knot battleship.
Also, I will
Yes,
remind...
but that wasn't the authorized one.
Yeah, but the one that was...
I will remind the court that the U.S. Navy was happy to take a speed hit if it meant more armor and firepower in the heyday of dreadnought construction. That's why they were happy. They were all right, if a little grudgingly, with Hood, because they figured that the 12-16s that the Colorados were toting around, despite the lack of speed, made them rough equivalent. So we're gonna go back to the because we are removing the reason for being of carriers. We are going to go back to the U.S. Navy mindset that birthed the Lexingtons and the Colorados in the same time frame.
With the lack of air power, we now need battle cruisers. Sea control.
Yeah, and scouting.
The
only scouting doctrine you're going to have at this point is surface search.
But what about land-based
Or is
aircraft?
scouting for surface assets.
What about land-based aircraft?
That if we get into that, then it undercuts the question, because there's no reason. If we acknowledge the existence of land-based aerial reconnaissance, then we have to pretend there's a weird mental block in the minds of naval planners with regards to just taking that land-based infrastructure and navalizing it.
Yeah.
So I was just, for the sake of my blood pressure, trying to ignore that.
Fair enough. I feel like we should probably move on anyway.
I thought
We
your
have done this.
I thought your blood pressure was rather low at the moment anyway.
Yeah, I may be 2 units of plasma low, but I'm still trying to figure out the way to have a hypotensive stroke with this question. So, or hypertensive stroke with this
Yeah.
question, which is kind of impressive when you think about it.
Well,
Yeah.
I think it's been a good question all in all.
Oh,
We've had
yeah.
a lot
It's a
back and forth.
good question. It's just
It's
driving me up the fucking wall.
True, but
American battle cruisers based off the Alaskas with 8 16-inch guns.
I
Ooh.
disagree,
not
but
the
moving
word.
I
on.
do think we've done it to death.
Yes. Typical Officer asks, in the process of the US Army's acquisition of the Abrams, the Germans sent the Leopard 2 AV Leopard version to the US to compete against both the XM1s. The Germans modified and adjusted the Leopard 2 for US use. Do you think the Army wanted the Leopard 2 to lose and preferred the more American design? What if somehow the Leopard 2A5, Leopard 2AV wins the competition and the Army chose the 2AV over both of the XM1 designs? As Moe says, it was actually the Leopard 2 was just too cramped for the US, and they're not really going to adjust to that. But also politely, the American design was always the American designs were always going to win, especially for a tank buy of that size. The Leopard 2 winning would have basically been the American Army saying, we're happy not building our own tanks in the US to American designs for American companies, which would have been economic and political suicide. The Leopard 2 was brought over the Leopard 2 was brought over for comparison.
Essentially, Congress would say, we recognize that the Army has made a decision, but no. The Army will order orders.
And it's the Leopard 2 AV, so it's an incredibly flawed variant of the Leopard 2 they send over.
Yeah.
And it's amazing it somehow manages to nearly win, though.
Yeah,
Which shows you.
This is very much part of the
flaws.
Leopard 2 development process as well, and is part of the ongoing horse trading between the Leopard 2, the German-British collaboration with the FMBT-70s politics, and the argument over who's going to use what gun.
Oh boy, not this shit again.
So, in the end, the 2AV is a very good comparator to bring over. It's another vehicle in development by a contemporary power of similar design spec. And the Leopard 2 does go on to be a very good vehicle.
And also, it
At
gives
this
them
time,
a...
It's
Sorry.
still in the progress. They're still working on it. And it isn't quite up to snuff for the Americans. Because it's not just got to be good. It's got to be brilliant to overpower the domestic desire to build your own stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And in the end, they end up taking the German gun anyway, so that's still half a victory for the Germans.
I mean, yes, but not at first with the first marks of Abrams, but yes. I mean, I would also argue that is the main thing here. It gave them experience using, firing, working with that 120, and basically gave them the measure of that gun compared to the
it was for
105.
the tripartite gun tests, actually,
Yeah, there you go.
which I believe were 7.677 for the tripartite gun tests, because that was when we were all trying to agree on a standard weapon, and we were being pretty intransigent with our 110 rifle design, and then later our 120 rifle design.
Whoa.
Trying to get them all to-
British rifles. Whoa.
Well, the British being very obsessed with Hesh, really.
Ah, yes. I will smack you with an explosive put
Sort of 60s and 70s, the twilight of Warlord.
of what?
No, I didn't understand what you said. Could you say it again?
Yeah.
The 60s
sorry.
and 70s, the twilight of Royal Ordnance.
Ah,
Oh,
yeah.
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, Royal Ordnance is definitely losing its edge at this point.
Yes, sadly.
The thing is, we don't believe it is at the time, and we're very much stuck in our idea of everyone's using our guns, they should continue to use our guns, and it sabotages most of our development projects at the time.
Yep.
We couldn't agree on what gun to use for the FMBT-70 project, so we couldn't agree on who was going to take the powertrain and the armor design and all that stuff, because turns out guns are a pretty essential part.
Yeah.
It also doesn't help that the government refused to give Royal Ordnance the spending to retrofit Royal Ordnance leads, so they could make the lighter gun barrels for the 120. Sorry, no, not 120, the 110.
Anyway,
Which means
let's
it's just
hop back
bad.
to the Leopard and the comparison to the XM1.
Yeah, very quick. I think we can probably wrap this up quickly, but Sheer, take it and go!
Well, most of my research is actually, sadly, not on the XM1. I'm not too familiar with the Abrams' development process, which is a bit of a shame because I do hear it's quite interesting. But the Leopard 2 is, all in all, an in-progress design, not yet good enough, doesn't get over the domestic capacity, also domestic desire to keep production in-house. And in the end, the discussion moves very quickly away from will the Americans buy the Leopard 2 AV, and instead moves to, okay, what harmonization program can we have between the Leopard 2 and the XM1? And it's really those discussions that both fundamentally kill all faith in the FMBT70 program in Britain, but also form the basis of the current sort of consensus we have with who's going to use what guns and 120s and so. And in the end, that is a really big victory for the Germans in this case. Getting even their gun adopted, even if they didn't have the whole tank, but to getting a harmonization deal out of it as well, that was really successful for them, and I think was about as good as anyone could reasonably have expected to get out of it. Because no superpower is going to give up their capacity to domestically build and develop tanks.
I wish that was true.
It's sort of like what happened in the late 40s and early 50s with the British sending the Centurion Mark 4 and 5s over to the US development tests to go against the M26s and 46s. Like, the chance of the Americans adopting the Centurion were pretty much zero, but they were really good for benchmarking.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
If only the Americans did adopt instead of the Pershing.
Yeah. Typical gunnery officer asks, why don't we see HVAR, RP3 or Zuni-sized unguided rockets today or late in the Cold War? Do you think a large-sized rocket isn't viable for use from aircraft and for the load and size? It can be used for other weaponry. I will just read Moe's quick notes here because it does basically kind of close the question off in a nutshell. Rocket these sizes nowadays can and do fit their guidance system, so why dumbfire? And also, dumbfire rockets tend to prefer volume of fire to saturate a target area, so smaller rockets are overall better. And for example, with a Hydra rocket pod, you can fit, I think it's 70 rockets, and on a pylon you would mount 4 or possibly less of HVAR or RP3.
About that.
Yeah, the question is really, why would you want HVAR, RP3 or Zuni-sized rockets without a laser guidance kit?
Again, about that. HVAR's not HVAR, sorry. RP3's in use until at least 1968, with more in reserves to be ready to be deployed into the 70s. Well, and the rockets you then see later are just RP3s again, just now different casings. Like, RP3 stays in British reserves into the Gulf War.
I mean, yes, that is true, but it's not the front runner in rocketry used by British forces. That, especially
right. So how it goes is that the rockets that for the later Cold War can, to some degree, be traced back to being much more space efficient and miniaturized RP3s.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because rockets miniaturize massively, which also allows them to be podded. So basically, most podded rockets are an equivalent to an RP3. They're just much more efficient.
Oh yeah, like absolutely. I mean that's fair. I was not so much talking about the rocket itself. More like I think Fox has hit it on the head. I'm not so much on about RP3 specifically, more that size of rocket and the way it's carried as sort of a, individual rocket.
The interesting fact is the Russians have brought them back.
Yeah, and there were also rockets of that
size. For use on unguided rocket attacks.
Yeah, and also...
Right. So, that's just another point about this, though. The RP, for instance... So, are you familiar with SNEB rockets, Fleet?
Vaguely.
Would you like to know what they effectively are? the British ones.
Miniaturized RP3s.
They're not even miniaturized in a lot of regards. They're just a different warhead.
Well, yes, but they're not
Slightly
carried
changed
the
proportion.
same way.
Let him finish.
They are
Fleet.
the 2-inch RP which was the upgrade from the RP3, using incredibly similar warheads with slightly different designs, redesigned body, and voila. The initial 2-inch RP dates back to 1934.
Yes,
These are still available. Are still in British reserves. For the Harriers, we no longer have.
You're missing the forest for the trees here. I'm not bothered about the rocket's design or where it's come from. That's not the point. The point I'm making is they're carried a different way.
They're kind of not, though.
Right, okay. So to answer the question itself, they see service on helicopters in a way that they're very similar when they're in the Dumbfire versions to how they were for RP3 and Zuni. They're no longer used that way in aircraft. But a Lynx, an Mi-28, a Apache, you can mount them on its weapons base, and you can volley fire them off, and they do.
Yes.
Because sometimes you just need to put a dumb rocket, big rocket in things.
Yeah, but they're not carried as individual rockets. That's my point. It's not.
Yeah, but the Zuni isn't right. But Fleet, the reason why I'm not entirely listening to that as much is one of the weapons listed here is the Zuni.
Yes.
Which is multiple rockets in one unit.
Yes.
Yeah, it's an early podded rocket.
Yes.
Which is what the SNEB effectively is. It's just the earliest version of a SNEB. And so while you are not going to have something HVAR sized, something a bit smaller than RP3 or something to the same size as a Zuni, you do still see.
Yes, in pods. That's the whole thing I've been arguing. That's the whole point.
No, you haven't been arguing that, but
I mean, I've not been. I mean, Zuni, I wasn't really. Like I said, I was vaguely aware. I knew it was in a pod. I didn't realize how big it was or how long it had been in service. But I was more focusing on the vibe rather than the specifics, aka you don't see aircraft or helicopters carrying unguided rockets in single mounts under their wings, like they used to do.
Like, CDOT has literally provided a picture.
Yeah, that's a pod. That's a pod with 4 rockets in it.
But that is effectively what you still see rockets as these days.
Yes, that's what I. Yeah, but no, but that's not a single rocket on a rail. That's a pod of 4.
But yes, but that's why I'm saying you do still see podded rockets, and that is a podded rocket.
I never said you did see podded rockets. I said you don't see single rockets on rails. Every rocket's podded nowadays.
Anyway. I'm becoming Jeremy Clarkson, and I'm not certain how I feel about that.
Akazuki.
One of 3 multi-class aircraft carriers were built in the post-war period, putting the British on par with the Americans, who have 3 midways. How would this change the course of history?
British Calabar Aviation survives until the present day and never dies.
Fleet Air Arm is slightly less of a death sentence for pilots and aircraft.
That is enough capability and enough hull mass that you can actively preserve the Fleet Air Arm. Preserve the Catobar Fleet Air Arm to the Falklands War, which will give it the injection it needs for replacement assets.
It also likely gets you CVA-01.
Yeah.
Because you get these in 45, you then get CVA-01 in probably in the mid-60s.
I thought CVA-01 was... Oh, no, yeah, it was. The program was going to be started in the 60s.
Started in the 60s, you'll likely get the actual carriers later.
Yeah. Although it depends...
yeah, they were cancelled in mid-63, so
I just want to
probably see them laid down 64.
I just want to ask why... I'm not doubting him. I'm just trying to... I heard you say you probably get CVA-01, and I'm just putting my head to it and going... If the Royal Navy has 3 bigger carriers, I mean, yes, the Royal Navy might want to do CVA-01, but the government was already not willing to do CVA-1 for a Royal Navy that had older
Because
carriers.
these carriers are now 20 years old.
But no, but the point I'm making, Dragon, is the Royal Navy was already so the government was already unwilling to pay the capital to replace even older carriers, which were even less capable.
No, that's not true.
Dragon literally defense white paper of
HMS
1960.
HMS Ark Royal. Or actually, a better way to put it would be the Audacious class. You are familiar with them, I presume, Fleet.
Yes.
They are laid down practically 30s, 40s. You then you get Eagle in 46, Ark Royal in the 50s.
Yes.
This is instead you're getting 2 in 40. You're getting 3 in 45 that will be more expensive to run than these previous ones, but will force them to inject capital. You have a reason for there to be capital in the Fleet Air Arm now. You cannot quite go, oh, well, we don't need these as much when, no, there's now a much more clear and present need for these 3 carriers. You might see it go from 3 down to 2, because you probably see at least... If you can get CVA-01 in 65 or a bit later, you are retiring effectively carriers that are built for World War II with carriers that are far more modern. What if 3 multi-class carriers were built in the post-war period, putting the British on par with the Americans who have 3 midways? How would this change the course of history?
I would argue at that point. I would argue at that point that it doesn't say 45, so the Maltas might take the place of the Audacious class in the build queue with similar build times. And at that,
I highly doubt.
Okay. So we're talking about going through to CVA-1, right?
Why do you, hang on? Why do you doubt that?
Because they were cancelled.
Yes.
45. They are ordered 43.
Yes, but
so why I'm doubting it, Fleet, is because I highly doubt they are going to have, say, taking Ark Royal for an example. I do not think they will want a ship ordered in 1943 that is being commissioned 12 years later in 55.
So
going off of the pipeline of construction.
So hang on. But
remember the fact that you get they didn't want it even as they got it, but they basically were a case of, well, we can't really refuse it now.
So hang on.
They're much a revised design.
Hang on. Just let me just get this right. You're telling me that they will quickly build the Maltas when they didn't quickly build the already more advanced Audaciouses for what I can only, from what you're saying, is reasons. And the same things that apply to the Audaciouses somehow will not apply to the Maltas, even though the Maltas are taking
not what I said.
But I'm not hearing you give any reasons for why the Maltas will be any different. You just said they're getting an older carrier, but
right,
the Maltas are the same age as the Maltas are the same age as the Audaciouses.
If you would like to let me finish, because I was trying to there. Right. So you get HMS Eagle, initially laid down 42, relaid down and restarted in 1946. Same thing effectively happens with Ark Royal. They are later. They are deliberate. They are slowed down multiple times. If these are being built in roughly the same sort of style thing, these ships are additionally more important than the Audacious, because the Audacious were to a degree a follow-on designs. If the Royal Navy is now waiting till the 50s to build these, you're not getting them.
But
we're having to lay these down. So if in the post-war period, the question is, when are they laid down? When are they commissioned?
Yeah.
Like, I'm trying to wrap my... okay, now I understand what you're saying, but my thought process is, well, sorry, my thinking is at this point, why wouldn't the like just trying to
'Cause
really look?
remember,
Can I
there is
finish?
a-
Can I finish?
Go on then.
Let him finish, Dragon.
Why? Okay, I get what you said with the audacious class. That's fine. But why wouldn't, like, let's assume that, look at this, let's not assume, but why wouldn't the 3 Maltas be subject to the same slowdowns and constant revisions, which result in a later entry into service than their traditional build time you would expect them to have? Why would they not suffer the same slowdowns, revisions,
We
reworks?
had the revisions.
Um,
The
Right.
design has already been revised for the post-war period.
Okay.
Audacious, the Audacious were then they were done again, and again, and again. Whereas if the Maltas, they were relatively happy with the design they were looking at. Because keep in mind, the Maltas at standard are 46,890
that's
tons.
fine. That's fine. I've got it. Like that was the big thing. The big thing there was the Maltas had already been revised. They were happy with them. That was it. That's all. That's fine. Yeah. That's fine. I can accept that.
And
That's
to
fine.
support Dragon's claim, they've already ordered and are building and have partially built the machinery for the Maltas.
Yeah.
Which means the Maltas are, because they've actually started making the expensive parts, are a lot more concrete, so they will be built quicker. Because it won't be, oh, if we just revise the machinery a little bit, we can get more out of it. Then the machinery never gets fucking built.
Yeah.
Because
So
remember, Audacious dropped from the 46,890 tons to 36,000 tons. They lose effectively 10,000 tons in design from their
Don't
revision.
they also lose like 10,000 shaft horsepower?
Let me see if I can quickly
sure.
find some actual statistics for you in that one.
I know
52,000.
they lose like 6 boilers.
They
Just around.
no. The Foxer, they lose 50,000 shaft horsepower.
Just for
Okay,
my
yeah.
own to keep my own facts straight here. Weren't the Audaciouses an outgrowth of the light fleet carrier design, and the Maltas were a full-up fleet carrier?
No.
No. So
Both
the
are-
Audaciouses are a outgrowth of the armored carriers to the full extent. The Maltas are
post
a
armor
design
carrier?
no, the Maltas are a design attempt to merge the strike carrier and the armored carrier designs together.
It's basically what's the way Dr. Clark and Drac describe it? The Maltas and the Midways are both navies coming to the same conclusion.
Effectively.
No,
Because
those classes are both navies building what they actually want to build, not what the treaties force them.
Because, for instance,
No, it's
to quickly
it's convergent evolution to simplify.
the Audacious initially keep the armored hangar design, whereas the Maltas drop it and go with purely an armored deck.
Yeah.
So to use Royal Navy DNA, the Maltas are the desired post-war combination of Ark Royal and an armored carrier.
Yep.
While the Audacious are just armored carriers.
So very quickly, now that we've gotten through that, and I accept Dragon's point about especially now that I understand it, I absolutely completely accept and agree with his point about the Maltas coming into service earlier. At that point, then, given the fact that they would be, given the fact that the angled deck you would have to give them to make them operate aircraft, given their size would be much less stringent, and given how angled decks evolve, than you would see the angled decks for the Audaciouses. At that point, given that you would have to really angle deck the heck out of them like the US did with Midway in order to make them operate the generations of jets you're seeing coming in the late 60s and 70s, and the British are probably not going to have that money, at that point, you may as well spend that money getting new capabilities at that point. Yes, I do agree with Dragon. Given that, yes, CVA-01
Do you spend
basically...
80%? Yeah.
Yeah,
Do you spend 80% of the cost of CVA-01 modernizing this 20-year-old carrier?
Neither.
But yeah, you probably don't get either. But
You see CVA-1 gets axed because you've done nothing to change defense white, and you see these things get axed because they're not capable anymore.
Yeah.
There you go. Question answered.
You see the big problem in the future.
You've got
as well,
to stop rushing through questions,
replacement
Fox.
pain. So
Hot kettle
if you want
black
to maintain a carrier capability of that scale, you're going to need to build 2 successor designs at minimum that are still good, and that's going to cost a lot, especially with the fiscal squeeze that Britain is going through at the time. Because when exactly are we thinking that they might want to be thinking about, replacing these with the next generation of fleet carriers?
I would have said 60s and 70s.
I think what I do think though that might work in CVO1's favor, and I think Dragon might back me up here, is if you're looking at these much older ships, the program probably starts 3 to 5 years earlier. It's like
Doesn't matter. It still gets
design-
hacked by Defense White.
it's hard.
Because under Defense White, there isn't a reason for these large fleet carriers to exist. The same way the Royal Air Force gets axed, large parts of it get axed because there isn't a reason for it to exist in the eyes of the government at the time. And these carriers can be halfway built, but if there's no reason or money to finish them, they'll get axed.
Well, the money to finish them is actually the fact that, especially because the Royal Navy was good, this is where the Royal Navy started being smart. As the government, do you really want to cancel HMS Queen Elizabeth?
But also, it's worth pointing out that with 3 larger carriers, and also the presence those carriers will have, a larger fleet air arm, and a larger staff
more money
maintain them,
invested in
it's not even
various
that.
different aerospace corporations.
It's not even that. It's the advocacy that goes with it. The Royal Navy will probably have much better advocacy for why it needs this money.
You get institutional inertia from it.
Yeah.
Which is really important.
But they're still going to get reality checked by
white paper-
1960s Britain.
But they
having no fucking money.
But then the Navy basically slaps that in the face of, if you drop this, you have effectively basically said, we don't want to defend ourselves. Because if you're getting rid of these 3 carriers, what are you getting instead? Nothing?
Yeah, the amount of
the answer was in Defense White is nuclear weapons. We're not going to be fighting a conventional war against the Soviets, are we?
Yeah,
I would say if we drop the carriers at a later point, the thing that would replace them would be SLBMs, more of, or the first generation of. Because are we really going to be able to scrounge up the money for that while we're running 3 super carriers?
I think, well, they're not going to be super
carriers. Right, calling these super carriers is just not accurate.
What I think,
because these are traditional fleet carriers.
I think Dragon's got it right. I think Foxo is right in the fact that Defense White cannot be got rid of entirely. But what I do think is we see sort of basically a white elephant situation, which is basically where the first CVO1 is building, the others are planned. Defense White comes out. There is the institutional inertia behind carriers and the Royal Navy having this Catobar carrier air arm to resist it to some degree. Obviously, as the first capital ship of a new monarch's era, it'll be named for the monarch. Scrapping that will be politically, especially in this era of Britain where there is that much more of the old guard still around in terms of Parliament and, very, very staunch. You want to do what with a ship named after the monarch?
Also, just a quick one.
Can I just very quickly?
Yeah, keep going because I'll mention something about this white paper.
So basically, what you end up seeing is you probably end up seeing one of the Maltas goes into probably deep mothballs. The other 2 get scrapped unceremoniously. And you get HMS Queen Elizabeth entering service as the only CVA-01 and basically becoming the white elephant of the Royal Navy. The only modern Catobar carrier and the only one they finished. But luckily at that point, it'll be the late 60s, early 70s, and she should just about be able to scrape by as an in-service asset. Just about, because she's in service at that point, and they can reserve her, but scrapping her is going to be like you might see her in reserve just by the early 80s when the Argentinians do their funny, and at that point then hopefully there'll still be squadrons trained to operate off her, and at that point then there's the revitalization of, oh shit, this is what the carrier can do for us even if we aren't east of Suez at this point anymore.
So, Foxo, just to confirm, you're referring to the 1966 Defense White Paper, correct?
One of them. That's one of the ones referred to, yeah.
This doesn't happen.
This one
not
in
the
the
same
60s.
way. Because part of the reason why the Royal Navy couldn't really defend itself was, well, your carriers don't really have much point. They are small and not that overall effective in this war that will happen. If a war happens, these don't matter much. Nuclear weapons will. If you have 3 50-odd thousand ton carriers, probably by this point in time,
And 2
is
CV...
a lot more effective than 2 36,000 ton carriers.
And it gets better, Dragon, because these
If
CVAO... Hang on, can I just go?
Dragon finish.
No,
It would be good
I'm
to let
backing
him
him up.
finish.
I'm backing him up.
Let
No,
Dragon
let him finish.
No,
then
I
back
want
him
to-
up.
If we do get the CVAO ones early, like Fleet was suggesting is possible, you've then got, once again, more inertia in defending the Navy's funds. The Treasury was like, yes, TSR2 will work. Royal Air Force.
About that.
No.
Yeah.
So we've had to scrap that as well.
Yeah.
Also, now you've got a lot more voices saying we need to keep the Navy going. Not for nukes, though. This is where the Royal Navy probably admits very much that, unless you stick it on a submarine.
Although,
No,
hang on.
Now let Fleet go.
Unfortunately, I disagree with Dragon there. With a large CVAO1, or even just a normal CVAO1, you could quite easily say in this sort of nuclear age, with the air wing we have in terms of fighter, AEW, and everything else, we absolutely can. And also, if you're getting CVAO1, you're getting proper Type 82 with a full air defense suite. You can absolutely say, yeah, we can be relied upon to deliver nuclear ordnance from at sea with Buccaneer. Absolutely, the Royal Navy, and that'll
At this
be one.
point, Buccaneer can't do it.
Well, we could probably design.
At this point, you're looking at single spool Buccaneer. It physically can't do it.
Well,
The reason why
Secondly,
Go on.
can I?
Go on, yep, go on.
No,
The
talk
issue
first,
I
then.
see with CVO1 is the fact that you're in the middle of the decimation of the British aircraft industry, and someone's going to take a look at that and go, okay, what good CVO1? We can't put modern aircraft on it because we don't have modern aircraft.
Now,
um,
Fox,
And modern aircraft, let me finish.
go on.
And one of the big issues the British have in the late 50s and 60s and 70s is modern aircraft and modern carrier aircraft fucking expensive.
I mean,
And they're
As-
not willing to buy American yet.
As me and
But
Fleet
we are
mentioned,
willing to co-development.
and also as me and Fleet literally mentioned earlier, though, if you've got larger carriers, there's more reasons for the British aviation to keep going.
No. But
Yes.
or just for slightly more aircraft for 2 large carriers. It's
3.
going to get rid of the institutional rot and decay of the British aircraft industry.
she is
No,
That
right
is
there.
a good portion. Which is a good reason. Part of CVO1 got torpedoed because they couldn't put modern aircraft on it,
That's literally not
and
true.
no extra carrier is going to stop that.
I mean, CVAO. I mean, well, I do
Right.
understand. Well, you are. Well, Foxo, you are absolutely right about the rot that is in the British aviation industry. I will absolutely grant you that, and I don't think that the additional orders for aircraft for three Maltas will save them. What I would like to say is that for a much smaller carrier air arm, we were willing to buy things like Phantom. And at this point, we'll be willing to probably buy things like... because bear in mind, buying stuff like Phantom does bring down cost per airframe. And also, we also get to massively upgrade our carrier early warning by buying E2 Hawkeye, which is a
Also,
massively
again-
capable platform. And whilst I'm not saying that it's perfect, also the cost per unit for Phantom goes down even further in this case, because with CVAO1 being what it is, the modifications that massively, hurt the Phantom in British service, aka the strengthened airframe for the even more strengthened airframe, landing gear modifications, etc., are not going to happen. Obviously, we'll probably still get the British engines because, hey, Britain do what Britain do best. That's what we do. But the cost per airframe is going to be much lower. Now, whether or not that's enough to actually convince the government, I mean, there is also the option of a domestic design, given that there will have been a slightly stronger line of production for aircraft for the Fleet Air Arm, but possibly not strong enough to have that happen.
Are we looking at 66 here? Because if we're looking at 66, we're only a year away from the Harrier entering manufacturing. It was introduced in 69.
But Dragon, you had something to say while I was talking?
So, you say about the rot that happens in the British air industry. Yes, that might happen, except you've now got one very big caveat here. The Navy's actually keeping an eye on what you're doing far more, because instead of ordering between 60 to 90 planes, you're more getting closer to looking at 150 to 200. The Navy is focusing a lot more on this. Also, you've got a much bigger carrier. Literally, the Admiralty themselves said this when they were looking into CVA-01, that, yeah, the carriers we got in the Audacious's and the smaller designs for CVA-01 are not worth building, because they will not be able to hold much. But the final designs settled on being able to have potentially between 50 to 60 odd planes of Buccaneers and Buccaneers, Sea Vixens, Phantoms, whatever else, is much better.
We cooking,
now,
boys.
Again, you've got a lot more pressure on the air manufacturers that they have to actually give them something semi-decent. Rot will still occur. This is inevitable. But you don't have the same level of rot because you've actually got investment instead of just, here's a pittance every now and then, now give us something that's good enough. We need something that actually functions properly. Ironically, Foxo, it might result in one of your least favourite planes not being developed the way it was, with Sea Vixen. Sea Vixen probably sees a very different thing, because you've got a much different carrier.
I'm going to interrupt you there, because you're massively underestimating and not grasping how bad the situation is for the aircraft industry. You're looking at having to retool and essentially rebuild it from ground up infrastructure-wise.
Is this the situation in the late 40s or the situation after that?
No, well, we're looking at the situation in the 50s and the 60s, where pretty much everything's obsolete. At the end of their manufacturing tether, most plants that make aircraft physically don't have the equipment for the weight and the size to make second-gen jet aircraft. You're looking at you're looking at an overhaul that's needed to get the outcomes you want, that you're not going to get out of 200 aircraft.
So go on, Ron. Go on. I'm telling you to go.
I think the argument is, if you have Malta in service late 40s, early 50s, you are going to fundamentally change the procurement pacing of the various arms of the British military when it comes to aircraft, which is going to impact your industry's ability to produce aircraft.
Yes.
Yeah, but no. Well, my point is that you're not going to have nearly the impact you think you're going to have, because it's not an issue of manufacturing capacity. It's the fact that that capacity cannot translate into modern jet aircraft.
It can and did in the 40s and 50s.
No, yes, but remember, you're changing the odd. You're going up a level, a significant jump in complexity and size when it comes to manufacturing.
Are we?
Yes.
No.
Dragon, I'll point out that making the Buccaneer pushed Backburn beyond the limits of the Broth.
We're not talking Buccaneer here, though.
I'm using it as a fucking example so you actually understand.
But
right.
Foxo,
let me finish.
Now you know how I feel.
Blackburn was one of the was one of the few places that could build aircraft of the size and complexity needed for those second-gen aircraft, right? But to make the Buccaneer, their infrastructure and their facilities were pushed beyond their limits, which is why a lot of the Buccaneers came out with factory flaws that caused the wings to fall off.
Mm-hmm.
The fact
right.
of the matter is, to get rid of that rot, building a couple more aircraft earlier on is not going to help.
I feel
Because the
but
air facilities dragging shit the fuck up.
okay. There's no need for that.
So, and what I'm trying to say, if you stop fucking interrupting me, is the fact that you can have all the capacity you want. You can have the capacity to build 200 aircraft. But that capacity, like what happened to IRL, cannot translate to the next generation of aircraft. As the British learned the hard way, and the Americans and the Soviets learned the hard way. But the difference is the Americans and the Soviets had the money to invest to retrofit those facilities. The British don't. The 60s British government, even if you give, won't have it.
Boxo, I agree, I understand with that, but you're missing something that me, Fleet and Runon have all said here. We're not referring to the 60s.
Neither is she.
Yes.
Neither is she.
Neither am I.
Then, Boxo, I tried to let you. But
You're purposely being obtuse at this point.
I'm really not.
Because I was referring to the 50s and the 60s when this paper's coming out, when these next generation aircraft are coming out. The Defense White Papers.
Defense White Papers 57 and 66. Could I step in for a moment here?
Go on.
So, fundamentally, what Foxo is saying is mostly true. The British aerospace industry significantly struggles to make the transition from first to second generation aircraft. This is why we looked towards co-development as a solution in the 60s. In terms of on land, we worked with the French with the Sepcat Jaguar, and we were going to work with the French with the AFVG, the Anglo-French Variable Geometry Project. That fell through because Dassault got a bit too big for its boots, to put it bluntly. That meant that instead of looking internally with the UK VG program, which was its continuation, we could not afford this on most levels in terms of like a unit cost thing. We couldn't afford the development costs, and everyone knew at the time that through multiple upcoming defense spending reviews, it would not survive. And that is why we Trojan horsed that shit into the F-104 replacement group, which became the Panavia organization and gave us the Tornado. We were incapable of doing that for the surprisingly large order of 500 aircraft on land. In terms of at sea, we are likely going to have to look at something similar. Another co-development project, likely with another nation who is also looking to get something good for their carriers. Alternatively, we could just buy foreign. Both of those things are possible. They suck. We could probably negotiate some sort of co-production agreement where we buy the rights to make something and in turn use that and the experience from it to, reinvest in our own facilities. But it is highly unlikely that the British aerospace industry alone, due to the lack of investment that happened, even with the much larger on-land stuff in the 50s and 60s, is going to be capable of making more and more world-beating aircraft at sea.
Yes.
We're not talking world-beating
vaguely
here, though.
close with the Harrier, but realistically, the Harrier it's a limited design. I love it, but it is a limited design.
I'd like to put a word in, if I may, because I finally understand what Foxo is getting at. Foxo is not talking about numbers. She's not talking about raw capability. What she's talking about is the lack of capital for the sheer scale of recapitalization of assets that is required to move from producing first-gen jet aircraft at scale to second-generation aircraft at scale. It's the level of, and I had forgotten this myself, the level of recapitalization in terms of new tooling, new equipment, staff retraining, new supply chains, it's very, very significant. and a lot
Your
of the
standards have to be up there too. You
Yeah.
can't keep making these things by hand, otherwise you come across things like the saber dance and significant wing drop issues if
Yeah.
they're not like exactly the same.
Now, what I would say, and I think possibly if Foxo might agree with me here, is you might get certain companies who might be able to actually somewhat recapitalize with the heightened orders that they get, but it's important to bear in mind that these companies, if they do succeed in even partially recapitalizing their assets and their production jigs and upskilling their staff, are going to be still nowhere near as capable as they were prior to that recapitalization. Would you at least be willing to sort of see where I'm coming from there, Foxo? Hello?
I said yes.
Oh,
That
yeah.
didn't. No, Fox. That just didn't come through.
Okay, but yeah, and basically, it's gonna. To get back to the question, that reality is gonna vibe check any attempt to get CVO1 in the water.
I
Although
again don't think it is.
Because
That's 'cause I
what
agree
good's
with
a
Fox.
carrier with no planes?
what the fuck is the
And
original question?
Phantom's years off at this point.
Yeah, I feel like
Because it's not. I do right. So one thing I will say, Fox, is that you say the adaptation to second gen didn't work out for the British. I would say that's not accurate. Adaptation to third gen is where Britain failed. Britain actually adapted to second generation. It was a pain, but they did it. Because remember, Buccaneer isn't actually second gen.
Yeah.
Buccaneer's third.
I
So
It's
I would just
It's
like
actually a different era of jets.
yeah, I would
The
just
British in
sorry, go on.
the British in the early 50s and mid 50s, the rot hadn't fully settled yet. That's where the hope bit is. By the time, if you don't get any work there, then the 60s is done for. Yes,
I
the hope is because you are getting this extra investment in the 40s and 50s, so first and second. There is hope that you might get the third improvements.
Steiner's emergency funding.
I feel like this is lending more credence to... I need to get this point in quickly because it is kind of wrapping up the question. But I'll let you go first, Ruinon.
Well, I was gonna button this up because we are extremely deep into a very specific patch of weeds.
We are, but I am going to pull rank.
Silence!
I am pulling rank and overruling you. This is my show and my server. Do not make me mute you. I'm pulling rank.
Pulling rank is a quick way to get rebellion.
Yes, but in this particular case, I'm doing it. And that's happening. So anyway, to finish off my final point, so we can move on, this is why I think the sort of middle ground where basically sort of everything we discussed lends more credence to the white elephant theory, where you not only get a white elephant in the form of one CVA-01, but you also get the white elephant that is her air group, aka it would probably be, with the limited funding, with limited recapitalization, but not lacking in ability, as we know that British aircraft corporations can be, her air group is probably also going to be a selection of white elephant types. The last gasp of independent carrier aviation in the Royal Navy, aka she'll probably have a fully independent air wing of new types of aircraft, but they will be limited in production run, and they will probably be the last gasp of their particular types. So the entire carrier, its air wing, will be a white elephant. A one-off, basically. And with that, like, I'm not saying that's the definitive answer, but that's just my final take on it.
It's also so incredibly wrong because that's literally not what happened with the white elephant. But anyway, going on then.
Sufficiently nautical. Rick Atkinson mentioned in Guns at Last Light that American assault troops hit D-Day beaches with 68.4 pounds of kit, 25 pounds more than recommended. Can someone translate that into correct units, please? I don't speak American units. Why did they do this? Were they aware of learnings from the Pacific that recommended ruthless ditching of equipment, going so far as to recommend assault troops bring less water. I would guesstimate that the sort of landing you're doing on D-Day is not the sort of landing you're doing in the Pacific. D-Day is a landing where you would expect to be on the beach, be under exceptionally heavy contact. You have no idea what time additional supplies are going to be coming through. You're not going to know how long it's going to take to set up things like LST landing zones that are safe from gunfire. You're not going to know how long the Mulberry Harbours are going to take to set up. You've got recommended times, but you're not going to know. You're going to be aiming for breakout and then deep penetration as much as you can. And resupply is going to be spotty at best. So extra food, extra ammo, supplies, etc. are going to be something you're going to want to have. Whereas in the Pacific, for example, your landings, if they are opposed, are going to be backed by... Well, they are backed by heavy firepower anyway, but it's much easier to bring stuff ashore once the landing has been conducted. And in some Pacific Island campaigns, the landings are not even opposed. Or the resistance is a lot more minimal. And it's a lot easier and quicker to get supplies ashore and rolling through to the troops who are advancing the frontage. That would be my thought process there. Anyone else got any thoughts on that?
Overcomplicating it, it can be boiled down to one thing. An island is isolated and is a known quantity. When you're landing on D-Day, it is not a known quantity. There is good chance when you get past the fortifications, you're going to hit a German counterattack. And if you go in very light, you get the exact same reality of what happens when paratroopers meet a full-scale infantry formation.
That's a paddling, I believe the term is.
Yes. The troops that land on D-Day are expected to take the fortifications and then repel an infantry counterattack. They're not in the Pacific.
It's not my area of expertise, but what Foxo has said seems to check out to me.
Because you notice that they brought a lot more equipment, like outside the infantrymen, onto the shows in D-Day. There's a reason they brought tanks, and a lot of them. So next question.
Hey, you can't say we aren't thorough.
I'm annoyed Fleet got land warfare right. What have you done with Fleet?
I don't know. Look, it's funny actually. Doing all this driving I'm doing for work and being out and about all the time and not being stuck at home or on my PC all the time, it's giving me a lot of chance to just do the thinking and actually think through things I say and opinions I have and questions I've seen. I don't know.
God, that's dangerous.
Yes, I know. Fleet's thinking. God help us all.
The best way to figure out land warfare is to be a mobile engineer or network engineer.
Or logistician.
Because at that point you learn distance very quickly.
Yeah.
During a time on it.
Yeah, I've been learning that as well.
From experience.
Yeah, I've been learning that as well. I go all over the country. Speeding tickets? Dragon is...
She knows what she's done.
Just because I've gotten 3 speeding tickets
What?
in a heavy goods vehicle.
What?
I've only actually... Well, 1, I've got 3 points on my license. 1, I did a speediness awareness course. 2, they misprinted my name on the document, so I threatened to take it to court and they didn't enforce it.
Nice. So, okay, the next one is an interesting one. And I'm hoping the Dutchman will help. Akazuki asks, what if Japan had invested more in the development of helicopters during the 1930s? I know they did a lot of work with autogyros, the Japanese, during the 30s. But I don't know if they were working with proper helicopters. Because it's important to bear in mind, while helicopters and autogyros are... You know, there's lines of development that could run between the two... Making an autogyro work is significantly easier than making a helicopter work. Anyone got any thoughts on this? Japanese helicopter development?
They completely waste their money.
I don't think it would have been particularly useful in the areas they were in, but it's not my area of expertise.
I think
Waste
we're all
of
of the
time and-
agreement.
I know you added context to it, but clarification. I mean it more as in the Japanese saw as potential platform that could have been as a game changer and ASW experimenting as well, proving search and rescue with troop transportation as an additional bonus. You just don't get the capability.
The tech isn't there. The tech is not there. I mean, Foxo said it best, didn't you? What did you say? The engines aren't there?
The engines aren't there. You can't get the horsepower, and you don't have the reliability of RPM.
I would assume as well that the limited industrial base that Japan would be working with would mean they wouldn't be able to leverage it as much as they would like, even if they had figured it out. But
I mean, put it this way.
Put it this way: the British are looking at to build a helicopter that's the size of a little bird. They're looking at a high-capacity V12 engine.
Yeah. And let me put it this way: the only people to get helicopters into service in any meaningful sense during the war are the Germans and the Americans, and they only want to really get a design that functionally can move things is, I'm sorry to say this, the Germans, and they have to do all sorts of wacky shenanigans to get that thing to work. And even then, it's only useful as a display piece, propaganda piece, and possibly for interesting shenanigans. Yes, that thing. It's barely useful.
Okay, that thing's a fucking death trap unladen with one guy in it.
Yes, it was.
Because you know how I point out that you need a very stable RPM to make an effective helicopter for those engines?
Yeah, they didn't have that.
The engines of that aren't capable of that.
No.
And it's a twin rotor, which are already incredibly unstable.
Yeah. The only reason...
And really don't like it when the engines are out of sync. That has no way of keeping the engines in sync.
Oh, it's a single-engine helicopter.
Is it? I thought it was...
Yeah, because if you look at the crankshafts...
I was talking about that one.
Yeah, if you look at the crankshafts, they
yeah,
feed to a
it's that
single...
one.
Yeah, they feed to a single engine.
Which is worse. They somehow made the worst version.
The actual...
No, yes, the Americans that did the...
The R4.
I didn't mind us getting them mixed up.
The actual successful helicopter that in World War II is the Sikorsky R4. And the reason that it works is because Sikorsky goes, okay, I want my helicopter to be able to do this. And he basically massively he gives it far more engine than it needs, which means that not only does it have spare capacity for lift, you get that consistent RPM because you're not running it flat out to get basic flight because it has far more engine than it needs. Which is kind of what you were saying, Foxo, about, having consistent RPM.
Yeah, I mean, it's still an absolute death trap.
It was.
Although there is a really cool image that they've got in... Oh, God, it's the big American Aircraft and Helicopter Museum down in Florida. What's it called? It's privately owned. Where they've got one and they've got memorabilia for it. And one of the memorabilia is an image of one armed with 16 Havars.
Yes.
Which is commonly believed to be the first attack helicopter.
Yeah. I will also point out that letters this aircraft also did a heroic thing, like it did the first medevac by helicopter in World War II as well, from a spot east of Manila.
Yeah, and so if that's because Akazuki says that's what they were thinking for the Japanese. The issue is that these are pushing the very limits of the engine techs for the Americans.
Yeah.
The Germans and the British.
Yeah.
We're talking that these are very light aluminum-based engines.
And I'm also going to point out that there's another problem here. These are also niche side projects from much larger war economies that could afford to put equipment and resources towards projects like this. I know it's more niche case in the German sense, but again, it's still a larger war economy than the Japanese, especially in the aviation sector. you've got the slack. I know slack capacity is a bit of a weird word in this case, but you get what I mean. What are the Japanese sacrificing in terms of aviation to do this? What is getting the axe? Would you agree with that, panel? Anyone else think that that's not accurate?
I think they physically can't make them, period. Because the Japanese can't make high enough capacity engines, even at their best.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I also think that it will come at the cost of something much more immediately important, because there's only so much R&D money to go around.
Yeah. Minecraft Watcher, what if the Spanish third rate Glorioso was to appear today? I don't remember what year in which it was carrying the treasure. Carrying the treasure or not, if she appears today, funnily enough, she would actually be fairly easy to wrangle, because the House of Spain that she serves, I think, is the Bourbon House, which sits on the throne to this day.
Question, is she the one that's carrying basically a third of Earth's platinum supply that ends up getting dumped?
I don't think so, no. She was carrying traditional treasure, I believe. But I will just check. 1 second.
I'll be heading off, actually.
Right, farewell.
Farewell.
See you, Andor.
No, she was carrying a large shipment of 4 million Spanish dollars.
Okay. Probably not much then. Just a little bit of inflation for Spain. Maybe.
And you probably have them melt it down and add it to a reserve. Also, I don't think it's good quality gold either, so it probably wouldn't be worth that much money in today's money.
It is. At this point. It's near pure gold bullion.
Yeah.
Also, I don't think you melt it down, actually. Honestly, this might have more value in historical artifacts than...
You could probably
gold.
have saved some of the coins as historical artifacts, but that amount of money is going to be... That is significant levels of... Spain is a lot more well off and can probably pay down a large chunk of its debt if it wants to.
Wait, forgive me if I'm wrong, but it's Spanish dollars in the way that it's pre-minted. Most of it's pre-minted, so it's still in bullion form.
It's a piece of 8. It's a silver coin of 38 millimeters diameter, and it's 25 grams of fine silver.
Which means it's basically pure and pre-minted.
Which means
that's really good fucking gold and silver.
So at that point, yes. Honestly, at that point, I suspect Spain will go, "Hey guys, guess what? You know the national debt's fucking gone, mate."
It's not that much. It's not quite that much because it's going to cause the inflation. But you dump that. Say you just squarely dump it on the market. Oh, you might call it. It's enough to cause an economic.
Yes.
What's the term?
Bubble?
No. Recession.
Oh, that's a paddling. Right. Anyway, next question. And the last question. Typical gunner officer, do you think the Osprey is much more fitting for the United States Marine Corps use because of their ship's shore ability and ability to do it quickly? Yeah, there's a reason the Marines like the Osprey. It can carry a lot of dudes and carry in places quick. That's why they like it. Because it can carry a lot of stuff, but also it can carry that stuff quicker than helicopters can to places.
Okay, I actually to answer. So you won't get a Mansa Musa situation, Petchington, because there's not that much gold on the ship, but it's still going to be a healthy amount of enough money to be incredibly unhealthy.
Yes,
for the economy. So many things are still pegged to gold, despite the fact national currencies aren't.
Yep. Right. Thanks very much, everybody. That is bringing us to the end of our time. And wow, what a rambling. Oh, no, actually, bang on 3 hours. Hey, we didn't overrun. Nice. And we had some very good questions and some very good discussions. And we managed to get the interrupting down a little bit. Also, I've come up with an idea, but I'll be explaining that later. I've been working on a little thing all week for how to possibly end it forever. But I need more time. I need more time to work on it.
Ping.
Okay, what ping?
I sent you a ping on your server, and I need your thoughts on it. To a degree, I'm already getting rune-ons.
Let Fleet finish and we'll talk about it here
Yeah, no,
when you leave the stage open. You leave the stage open.
I will. Anyway, thank you everyone for coming. Obviously, shoot if you are a Twitch enjoyer. You're not seeing this. If you are not a YouTube enjoyer as well. If you are a both enjoyer, please do feel free to tune in on Sunday for Fleet Sunday streaming. It'll be more Dawn of War, Dark Crusade. We've already killed Chaos as the Imperial Guard. What's next? Who knows? If you are a YouTube enjoyer, then obviously you'll have to wait until Monday for Ramblings. Also, I am now pleased to announce, and I will announce this again on Monday because there'll be more people here, but with the votes on Patreon tallied, I am actually going to begin work on a multi-part series discussing the fall of the paradigm of active firepower and passive protection, aka how did the idea of having a gun and protection against that gun die as the way in which naval battles were decided. So that video series will be in production. It'll be probably edited intros and outros with a little bit of commentary from me, and then there'll be a standard discussion with me and other panel members who will probably change depending on what era we're discussing. So I'm going to start putting all that together. It's the first time I've ever attempted a project like that. So please do give me some time, and it probably won't be something I even consider starting until Japan is squared away and done with. So, and you probably won't see the first video of that until next year at the earliest. But yeah, but that is coming.
And also, Fleet, what is your opinion on the Volvo 242 Turbo?
It's a car.
Of 1983.
It's a car, I guess.
You told me you'd research it for me on Monday.
I didn't.
Yeah.
Well, it's a car.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, thanks everyone for watching. Take